Carl and Lou here from Brrraaains A Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short. It's an in-depth, a Halloween weekend in-depth. And we're looking at a trilogy, a specific trilogy, Creepshow. You've seen the title, it is Creepshow. That's Creepshow 1, 2 and 3. We're not covering the TV series that have re-emerged in recent times, anything like that. We're just sticking exclusively to the 3 anthology movies that were released as early as 1982 to the latest, what was it, 2014? Something like that. Something like that for Creepshow Part 3. You say Creepshow to most people, they think immediately of the original movie, I think, more than anything else. Some might remember elements of the second, and a few, I'd imagine, will think anything of Creepshow 3. You know?
What Creepshow?
It's not. In that sense, it's very, very different. We will get to that, obviously, at the end, but we're going to begin. We're talking about the original anthology, the much beloved, and dare I say, maybe the best anthology ever. You know, there are very strong ones around it, things like Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, that's that specific one, a Cat's Eye. Is it Cat's Eye? No, I can't remember that. I think there might be a story in it. No, it is Cat's Eye. It is Cat's Eye. That's a great anthology as well, but to be honest, nothing really tops Creepshow. The 1982 American horror comedy anthology film directed by George A. Romero and written by Stephen King, making this film his screenwriting debut. I think there is a good sign already. 1982, George A. Romero directing and Stephen King writing. That's a very strong combination.
Yeah. You say them two names, you're like, right, okay, I'm on board.
Yeah, whatever you might think of Romero's later work, this 82 was a strong point for him, like still coming off the back of the Dead trilogy and stuff like that. And Stephen King, again, whatever you might think of some of his work, no one can really doubt that. He's an excellent horror author. In addition, the film's got what you would call it an ensemble cast. Lots of names, faces you recognise from things, people who have went on to bigger things, or were just doing something a bit different in this regard. So the likes of Hal Halbrook, Adriana Barbeau, Fritz Weaver, Leslie Nielsen, Carrie Knight, E.G. Marshall, and Vivica Lindfors, as well as Stephen King himself appearing in one of these episodes.
You missed that one.
Who did I miss?
Ted Danson.
Oh, and of course, Ted Danson. Yeah. Yes, of course. Well, I couldn't write every single cast member down.
But he's quite big.
He's a major part of certain of one of the stories, of course, but it's one of those where it's like the cast list is so long. Like you're looking at the opening credits, it's like, oh, they're in it. I remember that, you know, and stuff like that. Galen Ross also appears, like, and it's funny because obviously at the time of recording, you know, we worked our way through the original trilogy of the Dead. Oh yes, Ramirez, and she played Fran in Dawn of the Dead. I couldn't work out who she was, if you remember. Because she actually plays a character that's only on screen for a very short amount of time with her actual face. The film consists of 5 short stories. You get 5 in the original Creepshow. That's Father's Day, The Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrell, which is actually based on King's short story Weeds, which I've never read.
No, I've not.
Nope. No. Something to Tide You Over, The Crate, and They Are Creeping Up on You. Which of those 5 would you say is your favourite?
Oh, it's a difficult one. I did have the most nightmares about Father's Day growing up. So that was the most impactful. Watching that again, I remember the most about that one. Yeah. Oh, it's really difficult. See, I always find it interesting that you say that about Father's Day. I think that's maybe up there as one of the weakest of this, personally. My favourite is Something to Tide You Over. Performance-wise, good story, tension, how it plays out, it's really, really good. When I was younger, I used to like They Are Creeping Up on You because of the whole bug aspect. And that one more. But the rest are all very, very good. Like, Father's Day is a great story. But, like, I like the sort of tongue-in-cheek silliness, but the horror aspect of The Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrell. And while The Crate is dragged out, slow, it is performance brilliance. Yeah. And generally one of those where you're like, it's just enjoyable to watch kind of thing, you know? Yeah, it's cleverly thought out. Because you want him, like, you want the guy to get... We'll get more into exactly the specifics of that story. Nightmare-wise, I watched this film far too young, and Father's Day gave me nightmares for weeks, so I should have watched it that early. Well, 2 of these stories were adapted from King's short stories, with the film bookended by obviously a prologue and an epilogue, which feature a young boy named Billy, who I found out, Joe King. That's Stephen King's son.
who obviously is an author himself now as well. I was quite surprised by that. It's like, oh, I didn't really get that. No, not at all.
Even like that's perfect naming as well. Like American kid Billy. So
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of Billies in like.
It was supposed to be like that, though, wasn't it? Because his father's a little bit abusive and doesn't like him reading comic.
And the dad's famous as well. Tom Atkins.
Yeah, I mean, it's good timing as well. Halloween weekend, Tom Atkins, obviously the star of one of the more underrated Halloween sequels, Halloween 3 season of The Witch, as well as things like The Fog and stuff like that. He's an instantly recognisable face if you've kind of grown up in horror circles. And this, he just simply plays the father. He's angry that his son reads horror comics and stuff like that. But like unnecessarily, unreasonably angry.
Yeah, there's worse stuff out there. He could be watching or reading.
It's silly, it is a bit silly, but it's fun. It fits the whole vibe of this movie because this is a homage to the EC horror comics of the 1950s, such as Tales from the Crypt, The Vault of Horror, and The Haunt of Fear. And it feels that. Like, this film, I think what makes it so special and something nothing the sequels have never been able to capture is how it makes it feel like you're watching a comic.
Yeah, so the lighting, the shots, so you watch certain scenes. I think that's when I commented on when people popped up in the kitchen on Father's Day, Happy Father's Day, and like the way they had the lighting, I was like, wow, yeah, that's perfect comic book frame. What's it called? Section? What's the word called?
Panels.
Panels,
yeah.
That's it.
Something that Tide Over does that quite well as well with the sharp colours and the sort of noises. The same with the Crate does that, where it's sort of sliding.
Yeah.
Moving the story along through sliding frames, like the pages being turned and stuff like that.
that.
It's really, really clever stuff. The Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrell does that as well in a really unique way. The only one I don't think really does is they're creeping up on you. But I don't think that really matters at that stage. It nails that aspect. It really, really does. It feels like you're watching a comic. And that's very, very cool. Now, we're going to run through some interesting trivia. There's a lot of trivia out there for Creepshow, so obviously I've not got it all. So I ended up reading through them and selecting a few that I thought were quite interesting. So one of the things I always really loved about Creepshow was I saw Creepshow after seeing things like The Naked Gun.
Yeah.
And a lot of slapstick horror, comedy horror stuff that Leslie Nielsen did. And of course things like Airplane. So when I went back and then saw Creepshow and saw him in a serious role as a villain, I was stunned, taken back. Like I remember young and not sure if I liked it. Do you know what I mean? Not sure if I liked it.
You should be in a comedy. You should be laughing at him rather than going, "Oh, he's a piece of work."
Yes, exactly that. So that's why I think something that tied you over has always stood out for me because it's Leslie Nielsen. But it is interesting to know that while during the scenes and all that, apparently it was all business, he had a fart machine in his pocket during the shooting. And he would let it go off during rehearsals or just before director George A. Romero would call it action, causing Ted Danson and the crew to crack up with laughter. Oh, God. Yes. So that can be, imagine that being quite annoying.
Because it's quite a dark story, isn't
it?
it?
Leslie.
Yeah.
You know, so I do quite like that. During a fan expo in Canada, 2015, Romero had said that the cockroaches were the most expensive part of this movie, stating that the cockroaches cost 50 cents a piece. And he used more than 250,000 of them.
Whoa, I can't
a grand total of $125,000 on roaches alone. Yeah, there are a lot of roaches in the final story.
Oh, it goes nuts on them. Wow. That's a lot of money on cockroaches.
It is.
But it has good effect.
But it really does, yeah, because they're real. Like, that's such an aspect of it as well. This part fascinated me. I didn't know this. Apparently there's an alternative ending for Something to Tide You Over.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
Scripted, but then rewritten. So it was originally scripted, but then it was rewritten. And what it actually did was it found two policemen dropping by to investigate Richard's panicky but true claims of Harry and Becky invading his beach house. Right. When the policemen laugh at his story, thinking he's drunk, Richard attempts to prove this by showing them the camera footage of both the undead stalkers arriving at his house. Right, okay. Instead, though, the television ends up playing his incriminating conversation with Harry before and during the latter's burial by sea.
Right, okay.
Richard protests that it's all been set up and that it's the wrong tape. And the film smash cuts from there to Richard's murder trial. He's convicted and sentenced to death row. Another smash cut then finds Richard in the gas chamber laughing hysterically, even while the life is choked out of him, saying, "I can hold my breath for a long, long time."
No, for the one we had.
I do and I don't, but I like the fact that it still had that "I can hold my breath for a long time" thing in it, because that's such an important aspect of this story. I really liked it. Another interesting trivia, and this is one for eagle-eyed viewers, some easier than others. The Marble Ashtray the one which plays a major role in Father's Day, is featured in all 5 of the film's segments, if you look closely.
I think we nearly spotted all of them, didn't we?
I think we missed one when I look back at it. Yeah. So, Father's Day is obvious. It's shown to viewers multiple times. It's part of, in fact, it's handed to a character. It's part of the murder that occurs in that. Number 2, the lonesome death of Geordie Verrell. It's next to the cash box at the Department of Meteors.
Oh.
So I don't think we saw that.
Oh, when he says his little dream sequences.
Yep, absolutely.
That one.
Something to tide you over. It's on a nightstand next to Richard's bed, which we did spot. Yeah. The crate on the writing desk when Henry writes a letter to Wilma. We did see that as well. Yeah. And the last one, they're creeping up on you. The soap dish when Upson Pratt is washing his hands. Yep. I wasn't sure if that was one we noticed, but you think we did?
We did. We noticed. I don't think we noticed what's the second one?
Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrell.
Yeah, we didn't notice it there, but when I noticed it in the third one, I was like, oh,
okay, it's consistent.
Again, and then we spotted it in the last 2.
Well, we definitely didn't spot it in the extra one as well, which is in the wraparound story. It's on Billy's desk when he first starts stabbing the Voodoo Door. Oh, so that's the consistent thing that links the stories, I guess. Yeah. This next one I thought was interesting because I didn't really get it. And King was told to play Geordie like Wile E. Coyote, the way he looks when he goes over a cliff. And I picture that image in my head. I'm looking at the camera and the bug eyes and stuff like that.
He does do bug eyes.
But I don't know. I never really got the Wile E. Coyote thing.
I did get the very cartoonish way of doing things.
Like, it's a caricature. Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it was quite fun to watch.
It is quite fun, mainly because it's Stephen King. I think if it had been like a proper actor, it might have come across a bit hammy and hack-eyed.
It's the most kind of, dare I say, fun out of the lot of them. It's
the most fun, and it's probably one of King's better performances when he's appeared in movies, you know, that sort of thing. The music playing on Upson Pratt's jukebox at the beginning of They Are Creeping Up On You is the same instrumental that plays over the ending credits of The Evil Dead in 1981. Oh. It's a cool little touch. Yeah. Vivica Lindfors asked George A. Romero if she could improvise the scene at the tomb. Oh. So she improvised it. To do the scene, she thought about her relationship with her own father and her hidden anger at her ex-husband, George Tabarrok.
Nice, okay. I liked it.
Okay.
I liked it because I think it gave her a bit more background rather than just being some mentalist that killed her.
Yeah, and the story being told from the aspect of... Because you get the story being told by the people in the house, and then you kind of sort of see, okay, there's some trueness to it, but it's more of a psychological damage.
Yeah, it really affected her. So I'm glad she did that, though. That's a sign. Good actress. She was good.
The episode Something to Tide You Over is almost identical to Stephen King's short story The Ledge, in which a wealthy man forces his wife's lover to risk his life for amusement. The Ledge made its way onto film as the second segment of Cat's Eye in 1985, which I actually, when I read that, I was like, oh shit, of course it did. Cat's Eye. You know, it's a good little anthology. When we'll do it as a review one day. Yeah. It's got James Wood in this really great one, a sort of smoking one. Drew Barrymore. It's a very early film of Drew Barrymore as well.
It's all ringing bells, but I've not actually watched it. Yeah.
And last bit of trivia, this is one of 4 films that Adriana Babu and Tom Atkins co-starred together. Oh. The other 3 were Escape from New York, 1981, The Fog, 1980, and Two Evil Eyes, 1990. In all 4 films, they never appear together on screen.
Because Adrian is the wife in The Crate.
That's right, yeah. She's the obnoxious wife. I can't remember who she is in Escape from New York, and I've never seen Two Evil Eyes, but in The Fog, she is, of course, the radio DJ, which I thought was fascinating because I didn't put it. You pointed out to me watching. I was like, oh my god, she's so different. That's so cool. Quality.
She plays it well then because she's so obnoxious. You're like, oh god.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the film, the stories. We have a prologue first where we see a boy named Billy Hopkins, played by Joe Hill, which we said, basically getting told off by his father, Stan, Tom Atkins, for reading the horror comic titled Creepshow. After taking the comic from Billy and throwing it in the garbage, Stan tells his wife, who is Iva Jean Sassini, that she has to be hard on Billy because he doesn't want her son to reading it, calling it horror crap, which I laughed at because obviously Tom Atkins has made a living out of horror. As Billy sits upstairs, he wishes his father rots in hell, but hears a sort of tapping at the window. The source of the noise turns out to be the Creep, which is the host of the comic book, beckoning to come closer. This is sort of this is a practical effect where it's kind of like it's a dummy. It's a dummy. It looks like a dummy, I think, but fits the feel and the theme because it's very cartoonish. This opening prologue. Yeah, I got that from it as well. The film transitions to animation as the Creep removes the lid from the trash can, transitioning to the very first story, which is Father's Day. Yeah. The first story, Father's Day, is an original story written by King for this film. Sylvia Grantham, Carrie Nye, meets her nephew Richard, Warner Shock, and niece Cass Elizabeth Regan, along with Cass's new husband, Hank, Ed Harris, at the Grantham estate for their annual dinner on the third Sunday in June. So immediately dropped in as all these characters are meeting. From them, I think Sylvia Grantham is the most one that stands out. The way she speaks, the confidence she has, and almost the way Delight she tells the story. Visually, it stands out because Hank stands out purely because it's Ed Harris hanging onto his hairline.
Yeah, like well, it's always looked old. Like he's looking like a young man. And you get to see him disco dancing, so that's quite fun.
Yeah, we did have a lot of fun with that. Like I said, it's got that sort of silliness where there's a bit of dancing going on and where he's reacting to the story. And I don't mean to run down his hairline, but it's proper like, time to let it go, mate. Time to give up on that hair. It's done. They proceed to tell Hank about the current family matriarch, which is great, and Bedelia, which is Vivica Linfors, and about Bedelia's late father, the horrible, domineering patriarch Nathan Grantham, which John Loma plays him. He apparently accumulated a family fortune because the house is lavish, it's large, it's on an estate, it's got all of that, but it's also got a run-down, sort of decrepit feel to it on the outside more than anything else. But apparently his family's fortune might have come through bootlegging, fraud, murder for hire, that stuff. Apparently, 7 years earlier, Bedelia was rendered an unstable spinster. The result of basically a lifetime spent putting up with her father's incessant demands and emotional abuse. We see this in flashback scenes and of him, and it's always done in a clever way to make you feel quite uncomfortable, where it's quite up close to him, and he's just banging the cane and demanding he wants certain things. He then suffered a stroke, making him even worse and even more demanding because he couldn't move around on his own, and Bedelia ended up becoming his full-time carer. That torture culminated with Nathan orchestrating a fatal hunting accident. Now, this is always an odd one for me because this is sort of an important aspect to the story, but it's dropped in such quick fashion that if you were to be distracted for a second or two, you might miss this detail. So Nathan basically killed Bedelia's fiance Peter in a hunting accident, and this was purely to keep Bedelia under his thumb.
I think you have to give extra layers to the story. I don't think it's not quite simple as Bedelia just snaps.
Well, the argument would be was why don't Bedelia just leave?
Yeah.
You know?
There is that, but then it's still relative.
Of course, no, there is an aspect to it, but you know, by removing a fiance or something like that from it and effectively killing the love of her life, which is what happens, that causes even more emotional distress to her and feels like she has to stay. Maybe.
Doesn't she kill him straight after that happens? She does.
Okay, but not straight after. It's not like the next scene.
No,
like the next day.
No,
that kind of thing.
But I think they put the fiance in there just to kind of give her a bit of like motive.
Yeah, the only thing is, I'm saying it's a blink and you'll miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that Father's Day, driven mad by Nathan's constant screaming for his cake, where's my cake? She ends up bludgeoning her father, Bedelia, with a marble ashtray, which is the first sighting of said marble ashtray. This story is being told, like I said, to, the family are retelling it almost in a, oh look, we've got a horror story, skeletons in the closet kind of thing.
Speaking of the new arrival, because the fiance's new, isn't he?
Yeah,
Hank's on the scene.
Yeah, and he does look a bit uncomfortable, like that kind of thing. But Bedelia arrives at Grantham Manor this evening. She stops by the family cemetery just outside the mansion to lay a flower on the gravesite of her father. Obviously, guilt drives her to do that. There, she drunkenly reminisces about murdering her father and how Sylvia helped stage the killing as an accident in order to steal and distribute Nathan's fortune among the rest of the family. Again, that part there is just, what? Like, that's so blink and you'll miss it again.
Yeah.
And make, like, it's not an important aspect.
They've got a lot to put into a story, haven't they? So they kind of go, right, May's probably sick of his shit as well. She might get some, like...
Do we need it? Do we really need Sylvia to be like another villain?
And she's still working from years later, so she doesn't get anything from it. So it's not like she's promoted or like paid. No, she might be paid. Yeah, I think it's just a bit necessary. A little bit too much, maybe. But then it all comes around later. But maybe there's an obviously reason why there's certain murders happening.
Well, the family, the way they act, you get the impression they're greedy and entitled. Yeah. I think that's an important aspect.
Yeah, they do seem quite upper class, and I don't think the new fiance's from money.
No.
So they kind of bring him in and they're a little bit more fancy than him.
Maybe. But yeah, Bedelia ends up spilling her whiskey bottle in front of the headstone. And this brings Nathan's corpse back from the dead, like reanimated dead. John Amplis plays this maggoty, crusty looking corpse. The makeup effects are fantastic here. They really, really are.
Hence the nightmares.
Well, you get a lot of close-ups of his face and stuff like that. And when he opens his mouth, because it's opening, like you even get like the sort of stickiness between like the teeth, like the lips, that kind of thing.
And he probably would have had that during life as well, because he wasn't very well. You kind of see elements of that when he was alive. Like it wasn't like, obviously, he was being looked after.
Post-stroke,
yeah.
But he's still demanding the Father's Day cake he never got, and ends up strangling Bedelia to death. He then basically slowly makes his way through the rest of the family. Hank goes out to have a smoke and ends up thinking like he'll go and talk to Bedelia while she's at the gravestone, but he ends up getting crushed to death by the gravestone when he's knocked down to the ground and discovers Bedelia's head. I don't like this scene, purely because it's one of those, he has
quite a lot of time to
2 minutes to move.
Yeah.
Now, Frozen and Fear is all good and proper, but Headstone moves so slowly and he cut back and it's moving slowly again. And it's like, dude, roll. Fucking roll. Yeah. Like, you know? So I didn't really love that. But he ends up decapitating Sylvia off screen after killing the maid. Sylvia goes looking for the maid. There's some great lighting as she moves through the kitchen, stuff like that. Sees muddy footprints or rotten footprints.
I think that Beetlejuice nicked a bit of that idea for lighting.
Yeah.
You know, in the house, the Dinks' house, when it's on the other side. I feel like they've taken like they
a lot of films use good lighting.
No, but it reminded me of that because that's quite cartoony as well. So it kind of gave me like Beetlejuice vibes as well.
Okay, no, that's fine. And the story ends when Cass and Richard go looking for Sylvia, and Nathan arrives through the door presenting his Father's Day cake, which is basically Sylvia's severed head. And it's I think the last line is "I got my cake." Yeah. Yeah.
It's a great image.
It's a great final image because it freezes there. Because that ending obviously is left ambiguous because he's kind of gloating over that freeze frame. But the comic book based on the film has the creep given a vague hint that Nathan's next act was to blow out all their candles. Well, you've got to presume he killed them afterwards.
He's not go, right, I'm going to stop now.
Yeah. It's a strong opening story with visuals more than anything else. There's too much detail in a short story that it's just unnecessary. Like lots of backstory to, I don't know what, justify a lot of the behaviour. But it's like... It's a fucking zombie that got reanimated via whiskey. And
I think sometimes even like when you see stories about rich families, sometimes people just expect shitty behaviour. Yeah. Corruptible and things like that. So you could just kind of like skip some of the elements. The scene by the graveside was good because obviously it kind of gets him there.
Well, particularly when you know now that it was ad-libbed.
Because you can't say about revenge because if Sylvia hadn't got involved, we'd been fine because he kills the fiance. He's got nothing to do with the family. Like he's just part of the family now, so there's no real like reason for him to get revenge because Sylvia helped stage it.
I never really saw it as revenge. I just saw it as like the continuation of an abusive father sort of thing, and like his greedy family, like we're going to get theirs.
I did really like this one. Yeah.
You didn't really like it.
I did really like.
I was about to say that doesn't make sense. What you said at the start.
No, I did really like this one. It was quite strange watching it back again because I remember like pretty much shot for shot like what had happened because. The banging of the cane when he comes back.
I think by modern standards, you won't find this particularly scary.
No, definitely.
It depends what you find scary. And I think that's really interesting with the next one. So we return to animation first. Creep turns the comics books page to the next story, and we get the lonesome death of Geordie Verrell. This section of the film is based on King's short story, Weeds. So Geordie Verrell, Stephen King, is basically a backwoods yokel. That's the nicest way to put it, I think.
I was trying to pick a decade. I think it was 60s, 50s, 60s.
Maybe. It's hard to know. We stay on one small farm. Yeah. But he watches a meteorite crash land near his farm. Observing the crash site, Geordie goes over to look at it, really excited, and touches this meteorite, burning his fingers. Yeah. It's a stupid move, but then he's a stupid character. Yeah. That's kind of how it is. He then has a fantasy sequence, these flashes. Now... This is what I'm talking about, the Wile E. Coyote thing earlier on. Coyote. Yeah. Coyote. Fucking hell. Wile E. Coyote thing. When he does these flashbacks, King sort of tries to does cross-eyed. And I don't really get that. I don't really like that. It's just a bit like, it's too cheesy.
I think it goes cross-eyed when he's told about Muddy though, isn't he? Like, ooh.
He's all like, it's that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, I like the little cutaways, the little skeleton in the... No, it's when he goes to the doctor's.
Well, I like the cut. It's the way we get to the flash, but I like the cutaways doing. He imagines selling the meteor to like a local college's department of meteors, and it's funny, like the guy who's playing the meteorologist is like, I'll give you this much. He's like, no, I didn't raise no fool. I want, and it's like $200. And like that sounds like nothing, obviously, which I think does suggest a certain era where $200 would have been really a lot because he plans to use the money to pay off a bank loan.
I think it is 50s, thinking about asteroids crashing.
It's got it's a sci-fi thing, isn't it?
The phone he uses, the TV he's got, doesn't say anything newer than that, I would suggest.
Okay. Yeah. It can't be 50s.
Why?
I'll tell you why in a little bit.
Okay.
Taking precautions, he douses it with a bucket of water to cool it down, but this causes it to crack open and spill a glowing blue liquid. You know, upset that he's broken it. He has a similar fantasy sequence. This time he's brought the broken meteorite and he's being like, the guy's being mean about it, saying we ain't going to buy a broken meteorite and stuff like that. For the record, yeah, they fucking would.
They still would.
Absolutely. So he thinks, I've got to fix this. He figures he's going to glue the halves together in the morning. But while doing that, he nonchalantly dumps the liquid inside the meteorite into soil. Yeah. You know, making a mess and that kind of thing. And you kind of think, okay, that was probably a bad move, Geordie. Yeah. Time passes as he kind of goes back into his house, walks around, that kind of thing. And he notices his fingers are starting to grow this like green moss, plant-like organism. It kind of gets worse as he keeps sucking his fingers. And then what here is where, because he goes around, like I said, he's in his home. It's a farmhouse. And there's a point where he ends up watching like wrestling on TV. That's the WWF, and Vince McMahon is one of the commentators. Oh, okay. For his father's thing. Okay, so couldn't be the 50s. So it's not very maybe 80s, maybe 80s, late 80s. I can't remember when Vince McMahon was working as a commentator for his father's WWF.
So maybe it's just like he's just got backdated, like he's not living in the modern times.
I don't think he's got that much money either. Yeah. He ends up attempting to call a doctor, which is Bingo O'Malley, but stops as he's ringing the doctor because he has another fantasy sequence where this doctor ends up chopping his fingers off without anaesthetic. Yep. This has got a funny scene, which is the skeleton.
Oh, I love the skeleton. It kind of just like flies past.
Keeps flying by in the background. This is silly.
I love it.
But, you know, scared to call a doctor because he doesn't want to lose his fingers. The plants continue. We basically move through time over a short period where the plants continue to grow over Geordie's farm. We get shots from the outside and then inside, and everything Geordie touches on his body seems to grow. It's basically an infection, so to speak, but it's also very, very itchy. Causes Geordie to itch his body quite severely. I really like this stuff. I like this. This is, as silly as this one is, this is the kind of horror that always gets me. It's when you can't control something that's growing on you and stuff like that.
Yeah, because parts sometimes you look silly, sometimes you think, oh god,
it's body horror. So to speak. Panicking, Geordie ends up like having a big old drink of vodka and orange juice and falls asleep. When he wakes up, he figures it's been a dream, but the camera zooms out and we see that's not the case at all. The plants have really, really gone out overboard. They're inside a house now, and in a mirror he sees he's even got like a plant beard and on his chest. Really, really itchy. He sort of plans to relieve the itching by drawing a bath, but before he gets into it, he's like visited in a fantasy sequence by the ghost of his father, which is again Bingo O'Malley, who played like the doctor, the meteorologist, and his father. I don't really. This is the part I don't really get because I got the quote. So he says, "You ain't gonna get into that tub, are you? It's the water that it wants, Geordie. Don't you know that? You get in that tub, Geordie. You might as well sign your own death warrant." Huh? I don't get that.
Is it?
Like if it's a fantasy sequence, it's quite specific with a warning. You know.
Well, maybe like because just assume the plants grow, so don't be getting in no tub of water, and deep down, like Geordie knows that. Maybe.
I find it a little bit odd. It's a bit like out of place. But Geordie, rationalises that he's just delaying the inevitable, and the itching gets too much, and he ends up collapsing into the bath water. The next morning, we see the farm has been completely covered in layers of this vegetation. It's completely covered, and you kind of wonder where's Geordie, and then like. Part of it moves, and it's basically, imagine a ghillie suit. It's a ghillie suit, completely covered.
What's a ghillie suit?
It's like an army suit kind of thing when you're hiding in forage.
The grass pop up. Yeah, I've seen one of them before,
And in despair, he kind of reaches for a shotgun and ends up shooting himself in the head. See, that's what I'm talking about. Dark.
Yeah, it's shifts, isn't it? Yeah, because it's kind of like goofy, silly, grass, like plant life overtaking him. And like, he's going to shoot himself. Yeah, happy, depressing. And afterwards, we then hear like a TV weather forecast announcing that there's going to be heavy rains and good temperature, which obviously implies that this is going to help things to grow. As we kind of go outside to see the plant life is making its way down the road. You get a little Stephen King reference here with, is it Bangor or Maine? Maine. Always Maine.
Yeah, and you kind of like, okay, so it's going to keep growing and growing and growing. We're not going to be able to stop it. Don't know, maybe fire will, firebomb it.
Burn it all. Yeah.
It's a fun little segment. It's fun. It's short.
Yes,
it nails what it's going for.
If it was longer than what it was, you'd be like, yeah, it's not going to sustain for this long.
Especially with King's slapstick performance.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a good one. I think it's obviously different as well to Father's Day. Like a comic book anthology will often have these quite jarring shifts in tone. I feel like this one has it, but I also get like where I guess people like R.L. Stein was inspired by comics like EC comics and stuff like that, where you have a story, you feel like you've got a resolution, and but you have this really dark ending, which is what you get here. We return to animation. Augusta Wynn turns the comic book pages over, which also, I missed this, passes over an advertisement for a Voodoo Door that's missing its order form.
I saw that.
Oh, did you? Okay, maybe I didn't. I just didn't notice it.
Yeah.
And then we get to the next story, Something to Tide You Over. This story was written specifically for the film, and it's got Richard Vickers, which is Leslie Nielsen, who is basically a millionaire with a kind of like jovial attitude, hiding what is a pretty ruthless man, I love him in this. I think he's brilliant.
He's great in it.
And we literally open, and what I love about this is how it gets going. It starts with him knocking on the door of Harry Wentworth, Ted Danson, and he just comes in and reveals to Harry that he knows Harry's having an affair with Richard's wife, Becky Galen Ross.
Nice quick setup as well,
yeah,
isn't it? Straight in. You get the setup by having like him come, like when he comes in, you can tell obviously he's quite a bit of presence to him.
Yep.
And then obviously Harry's a bit younger, so it doesn't make sense. Obviously not everyone cheats, but like you can go, okay, so you've already pictured that she got fed up with Leslie Nielsen, new guy on the scene. I'm straight in.
Yeah, the confidence Richard has is really disarming. He's come to this man's house, he's confronting the guy who's younger, bigger, no doubt tougher as well. Like, there's a lot about it where you're kind of like, okay, he's walked in there, he's got a plan. And his plan is simply this. He wants revenge, and it's how he gets about that. He points out, like, because Harry points out, well, look, man, you didn't even love her. You don't want her. We don't want any money. We'll just let her go. Yeah. But Richard's kind of thing is, she belongs to me. Yeah. Like, I keep what is mine. And it's pride more than anything else. But he before Harry can get violent, he plays a recording of Becky's voice where she's begging Harry to help her. He then takes Harry to Comfort Point, which is basically an isolated beach house that Richard owns. And he points a burial man in the sand, and this is the thing, he constantly does this, but does this in a playful way where he suggests something isn't what it is, and waits for Harry to react, and then's like, it's not that. So obviously Harry thinks Becky is buried under that sand, but Harry points out it's not, and while he's doing that, he pulls a gun on him, forcing Harry to dig a hole, climb into it on his knees, and then bury himself. Now, this is a really cool aspect about the knee thing. Because the idea is, on your knees, you lose all ability to use your legs to push yourself out of the sand.
Oh.
You're on your knees. It's a really clever touch.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah, really, really clever touch. I was like, oh shit, that's a decent,
yeah, because I'm thinking like, wouldn't you just be able to like nudge yourself, slightly loosen yourself?
If you were with feet, you'd potentially be able to move your legs and stuff like that. On your knees, you're never going to have the same leverage. Absolutely, particularly with the weight of the sand, because he ends up burying Harry neck deep in the sand below the tide line. He then sets up a closed-circuit TV camera and VCR to record Harry, but then displays another monitor which shows Becky got the exact same treatment further down the beach, and the tide's beginning to wash over her face. It's very, very dark, very evil, particularly the way Richard just so calm about it.
Just explains it all. There you go. This is what I've done.
Particularly as he says, they've got a chance of survival. It's simply, can they hold their breath long enough for the sand to loosen as the water comes in and be able to pull themselves out? Yeah, it's bullshit. It's bullshit, because wet sand's very heavy.
Yeah, and it wouldn't loosen.
It would loosen, but you're really still going to struggle, because what you've lost then is strength.
Yeah, you're exhausted.
Constantly having to, catch your breath as the water hits your face. Yeah. Being able to time it right to hold your breath and stuff like that. It's a horrible way to go. Yeah, it's very, very interesting, though. Richard leaves Harry there, as the tide begins to come in, goes back to his home, which is this lovely looking, lavish beachfront place, sips a cocktail, and on CCTV monitors watches both Harry and Becky die. We get this great shot of like Harry completely submerged underwater, which is wicked,
very cartoon.
Very, very cartoon, very silly. But he also looks into the camera and vows revenge on Richard. that's what it is.
Yeah.
Many hours later, the tide's gone out. Harry returns to Harry's grave to collect the videotape. He finds the room monitor under the sand, but can't find Harry. And he kind of repeats to himself like the tide took him away. Almost like he's trying to convince himself. It's like, okay, maybe, but he was pretty fucking deep.
And there's also a bucket further down the coast that
didn't get washed away, which is an important aspect of the bucket, which is a plastic, slight metal bucket. Later that night, though, Richard's relaxing at home, but started to hear voices calling his name. And we sort of see, like, shadows and mist sort of creeping in. You know what's coming.
Yeah, but it's well done.
It's well done. And, like, this security system's basically useless against ghosts or zombies? Ghosts, I guess. Ghost zombies.
Undead, yeah, and it's nice seeing Richard, like, so seeing him on the back foot being actually scared rather than his usual confident. It's like, when it spooks him, you're like, Well,
he's still pretty confident in a way, because he'll like check something out and then he relaxes, like he'll have a shower and stuff like that. But of course, the culprits end up being Harry and Becky, who have returned from the grave for revenge. Waterlogged, zombie-like.
They're great looking.
It's a great looking effect, you know. They look nothing like the actors that play them.
No.
But, like, they also look like they've been submerged in water for a lot longer than they probably were.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good look. It's a good... Particularly, what I like is the voice. It's got, like, this bubbly, waterlogged lungs thing going on, which is a really cool touch. Richard shoots them. Bullets obviously have no effect, and he ends up barricading himself in his bathroom. But when he turns around, Becky and Harry are already in there. Yeah. He then starts to laugh insane. We get that kind of close-up, and he losing his mind. And we then smash cut, should I say, to Richard up to his neck in the beach. Harry and Becky are walking off, disappearing into the surf. And they've also set up a camera to record Richard's demise. As the approaching tide comes in, Richard screams hysterically that he can hold his breath for a long, long time. This is my favourite one.
Yeah.
It's brilliantly done. It's a well-told story with simply phenomenal performances, with really evil, dark, sinister undertones that still have that comic book feel. The ending is spectacular.
It is really good. There's one thing that just notches it down for me. Ted Danson, sometimes his reactions to things that are quite horrific looks like it's mildly inconvenienced. So when he first hears the message from Becky on the tape recorder, played by Richard, it doesn't react as panicked as he should be. And then down the line, I think he could have upped it up a little bit.
You reckon?
I think he could have been a little bit more concerned than what he was. I don't think it just looked like he was mild inconvenienced. Like someone said, "Oh, you can't do this today. It's been cancelled." Oh, okay. He doesn't look concerned enough that this psycho's got his fiance, like his girlfriend, like that.
Except that psycho happens to be her husband, and they, while having an affair, no doubt she would have told him about Richard's behaviour and stuff like that. Also, you know, but she would never have known that he had psychotic tendencies. So I always get it like Ted Danson's Harry doesn't quite believe him. Just believes it's mental torture more than anything else.
I think that maybe just...
It's a big step to suggest that he would have, hurt her. I don't know. I kind of get what you're saying because you said it during it, but I'm such a big fan of this. I don't see the issue.
Yeah, I just feel like sometimes just the situation, I think it would sounded a bit more concerned.
Okay.
Just a little bit more. Just a slight notch. But yeah.
The next story is The Crate. This section of the film is based on a short story of the same name. Mike Latimer, played by Don Keefe, is a janitor at a prestigious Horlicks University. We see him to begin with as he drops a quarter which rolls behind a grate under a basement staircase. While attempting to retrieve it, he finds a wooden storage crate pushed right to the back, marked "Shipped to Horlicks University via Julia Carpenter, Arctic Expedition, June 19th, 1834. That's
nice setup.
Yeah, that's the detail. It's hidden right at the very back in the darkness. I will say now, I suppose, I find the setup for this crate hard to believe. That over all this time, that was never discovered, found, any point, really.
They did make it look quite dusty and uncomfortable.
Yeah, but it's like the janitors must have had some reason to go back there or look one day or like. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know.
It's quite a box of,
there's nothing in there beyond that.
Yeah, fair
I don't know. I find that the one part of this I can't really accept.
But
it's being picky.
There's something that's in the crate.
It's being picky.
Okay.
It's being picky. And he ends up calling Professor Dexter Stanley, which is Fritz Weaver, to notify him of the find, and gets Dexter away from a faculty social gathering, which he will be glad to go, because at this gathering we've got Dexter's colleague and best friend, the very relaxed, mild-mannered Professor Henry Northrop, which is Hal Holbrook. Henry's perpetually drunk obnoxious as fuck, and let's be honest, emotionally abusive wife Wilma, which is Adriana Barbu.
I like the setup. It's a good setup to have her show her behaviour quite quickly as well. So like you get to see how she treats Henry.
Yep.
And then how she talks to people she's never met before.
Yep, and how embarrassed she makes everybody around her.
People she knows for a while. They've given her a dress that she wears.
She's just loud. She's loud.
And they've made her dress stand out. So everyone else is way more conservative than she is.
Yeah.
And like, it's not slightly dressed, but it just is a little bit more casual than everyone else is social.
I get it.
So straight away, you know exactly who she is.
Exactly what type of person she is. Yeah. And let's be honest, we've all met people like this in your life. Even if it's not like someone you know personally, like, well, you might be a colleague or someone like that who declares they're the life of the party.
They're just rude.
But then it's just like, oh yeah, like that whole thing where it's like, I just call it as I see him, and it's like, no, you're just a dick.
Yeah.
That's what it is. But what I also really like as well is it really nails other aspects where clearly Dexter is the more respected, as he's the one that's called, and higher up, and a lot of the students want to talk to him. He went through a divorce years before, and he likes to mess around with his students, so to speak. So there's questions about that behaviour. But as well about Professor Henry, who's instantly the mild-mannered aspect comes across strongly, but also how people treat him, which is they almost feel sorry for him. He constantly gets sympathetic looks and stuff like that.
Yeah, like a wet weekend.
Yeah, you know, it's like, oh, poor him, that kind of thing. But what I love is that you get this cartoonish aspect where Henry daydreams about killing Norma, and like, he shoots her at the party, pulls a gun out and shoots her, and everyone just sort of gives him a round of applause for it. And I love he's just like his face though is like, oh, thank you. I love it.
It's great. It's very. This is why this film is the best out of the three. It automatically tells you we're in a comic book horror story
instantly,
automatically, and it's just really funny to see as well.
It's a great opening. It's a great opening where you kind of like establishes who all these characters were. Because for example, as well, another thing you notice is Dexter drives away in a car that's quite, dare I say, midlife crisis-y.
Oh yes.
You know?
Yeah. Sports car.
Stanley meets Mike at the hall, and both men move the crate into the biology lab where they get it open. I like the tension build up to getting it open. It's very slow. It's very drawn out, pulling the nails out and stuff like that.
They actually use like ancient nails as well, so it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's quite hasn't been opened since.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's quite clever.
They're not machine made screws. They're literally just like iron.
Yeah, like bits of iron. Yeah. Mike, when it's partially open, thinks he sees something inside, reaches in and yells in pain. Fuck knows why he'd reach in. I'm like, no, get a flashlight. Yeah. Dexter's obviously quite scared by this, and the crate opens to reveal like its occupant, which is some sort of like dog ape-like creature with sharp fangs.
I thought it was like a kind of play on like a Yeti thing, because the Antarctic, like a snowman.
Yeah, but what is a Yeti if not an ape-like creature?
I suppose, it's like descendant, like gorilla.
Yeah, like that sort of thing.
Monster.
That's what it is. It is an interesting looking creature.
Kept it comic book.
Yeah, I guess so, absolutely.
Exaggerated features, and you can tell it's kind of like silly in nature.
Yeah.
I'm not judging it for not looking like realistic
or massively scary or anything like that. But it ends up dragging Mike into the box, killing him and eating apparently everything but a mangled boot. Obviously Dexter is scared as shit, flees the lab and bumps into the graduate student Charles Greason Robert Harper and tells him what happened. Of course, completely sceptical.
Yep.
But Charlie agrees to investigate and finds the lab covered in blood with no sign of the creature. We actually see the creature apparently pushing its own box back to the dark part underneath the stairs, which was, okay, that explains that part. Yeah. That's where they end up finding the crate and also see Mike's boot, which is there as well. Charlie wants to examine the bite marks on the boot and get closer to the crate, but when he gets to it, the monster pops out, obviously a trap, and kills Charlie. Yeah. That's one of the more gory scenes, because with the janitor you don't really see much. This you actually see the slashes and bites. Dexter flees, takes the boot with him, and goes to Henry's house where Wilma has left for the evening. He tells Dexter everything that happened, and that they have to destroy the monster somehow. Henry doesn't believe him, but sees it as a way potentially, which I thought was interesting, is you don't really believe him, but you going to use it as a chance to get rid of Wilma.
Maybe kind of things like it's too good to be true kind of opportunity. Just go along with it.
I thought this maybe, but it didn't quite work out there, which was he was going to take Wilma there, kill her, and then when Dexter gets arrested for all the murders, that will be another one.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I don't know. It's one of those things. And what Ed Henry ends up doing is he spikes Dexter's drink with sleeping pills, leaves him asleep, writes a note to Wilma to get her, when she comes home, to come to the university. And he writes a very mild-mannered story about Dexter having assaulted a college student.
Yeah.
Knowing that Wilma's, and appeals to Wilma's good nature of coming to help. But
she's
truth
a
be told,
gossip.
she's a gossip.
Yeah, she's like, oh, this is juicy. And she reads it, and like, I love the way she reads it out. She's like, oh, this is great. Forgetting that someone's been assaulted. She's just like, oh, this is great. I can use this as a tip at parties and like hold it over Dexter. And
Yeah, and not only that as well. Like when she comes and meets Henry, she's like, what did he do to her? Like that kind of thing. Like the glee she's almost got in her behaviour. Because of course she does come over during this period. Henry has cleaned up the lab. We said early on at the start of this video that this is the slowest one. This is why. Moments like this. Did we really need a couple of minutes of
him
cleaning up? It's fucking slow, isn't it?
It is slow. I think. Because
now I know it's cut in between this and Wilma reading it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But did we really need it to be this long?
Nah, could cut that a little bit.
Henry ends up luring Wilma to the basement. Wilma obviously berates him all the way, but she does actually get attacked by the beast underneath the stairs and more, because he's constantly like, oh, at first, he's like, the girl's at the back underneath the crate. She goes in, the monster doesn't come out, so Henry tries to attack her.
To get her in there.
The monster just doesn't come out.
No.
So he kind of stops what he's doing, and she berates him, hits him with a bag and stuff like that, but then the monster decides, oh, I'm going to come out now.
Yeah.
I don't really get that either.
I think needed it. I think they wanted the extra bit of...
Like it had gone or something like that. With that out of the way, with Wilma gone, Henry tells Dexter the next morning that he secured the beast in the crate, which again, we get another long sequence where he's putting the padlocks on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
At that point, we're at the end game, tension isn't that necessary, I think.
No.
And that he ends up dumping the crate into a nearby quarry where we see it sink to the bottom. He convinces Dexter that the creature is drowned, and both men agree to basically leave it at that.
Yeah,
The authorities will handle
it.
disappearances, end of. There is a thing where they sit down and play chess, and I do like the fact that the situation's changed, where Henry's now feeling quite confident, because Dexter sort of seems a little uncomfortable around him, and sort of like says like, well, what if I go to the police? And he's like, oh, you won't do that. Yeah. It's like, yeah.
She was,
Because what I thought was clever as well is what Henry's doing is Dexter doesn't know if Henry's telling the truth, and that what Henry did is actually keep the crate, and that if Dexter was to blab,
he would let
Henry would unleash the creature on him. I thought that's what they were going for there.
Yeah,
and it came across.
It's good playing it by playing chess as well, isn't it? Because obviously that's the whole thing of like checkmate kind
of. Yeah, absolutely. And but we see the beast is still alive as under the water it tears the submerged crate apart and emerges from it. So this creature is invincible, I guess. Doesn't drown. Can live for decades.
Well, it lives in the freaking crate without any food.
Yeah.
Maybe like rat. No, not even rats.
Nope, it's a sealed crate. Yeah, so it's an unusual thing. What works about this story is characters and acting. It's probably got the strongest cast overall. Dexter, for example, when he's panicking, does fantastically.
He's just a gibbering loon, and I just think part of being drunk at first.
Yeah, I love that visually as well. He's constantly sweaty at that point. Obviously, Adriana Barber as Verrell as Wilma is excellent, because you will hate her as well and enjoy Henry getting her comeuppance. Henry himself, Hal Holbrook. It's a really strong cast. My issue is that it just takes too long to get to what it needs to.
Yeah, for a short story, I think it needs to kind of make things a little bit tighter.
Yeah, and it's just not that tight. It's not. Is it the weakest one of the four? Out of the five, sorry. Like, weak in the sense that it's just not as strong as everything else, but it's not bad. Like, nothing's bad. But is it the weakest, you'd think?
I think it is.
I think it is too. Yeah.
Because the story's been done before, like a monster. I mean, obviously, the what they do with the monsters is a little bit different. In this case, obviously using it to get rid of your miserable wife.
The problem is, I don't think the monster is that good.
No, and I feel like he's kind of not used as... I don't know, the fact that he put his own crate back and things like that.
Which is weird, yeah. And like, you never really get any detail about it to really add any horror aspect to it, you know?
Definitely the weakest, but to say the Atkins saves it.
It's still a very, very good story. Which brings us to the last one, as we return to the animation, and it begins raining as the comic book turns to the next page. These sort of cuts in between a very simple comic book animation, move on. And it's They Are Creeping Up on You, the last story also written specifically for this film. Upson Pratt, E.G. Marshall, who might be my favourite actor in this entire
so
all five.
good.
Like, if you want a bastard, fuck me, does he nail it?
Smart.
Absolutely nail
He's
it.
smart as well.
Yeah, he's just a bad dude.
Yeah.
He's a cruel, wealthy, ruthless business mogul who suffers from myosophobia, which is an insect, isn't it? Fear of insects. Clean and stuff like that.
Oh, okay, so like germs.
Yeah, germs, that kind of thing. Germs and things like that. I think. Don't quote me on that. That's because I'm basing it off what his character's like more than anything else. But he lives in a luxurious, hermetically sealed penthouse apartment.
Stark white, clean.
Yeah, it's got electric locks, surveillance cameras, contact with the outside world via the phone, and it's white, and it's bare, and it's clean.
Which makes the jukebox stand out even more.
Oh, that's quite interesting, isn't it? Yeah, like he still has to have a bit of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite intriguing, yeah. His contact with the outside world is through the telephone, and basically calls his put-upon employees whenever he bloody wants. Story night, he receives a call from George Gendron, one of his subordinates, who reveals that his company, Pratt International, has brought the Pacific Aerodyne Company in a corporate takeover. Something that pleases Upson greatly. Yeah. What pleases even more is that the takeover caused his business rival, Norman Kastenmeier, to commit suicide. And this is where I just can't help but fall in love with Upson Pratt. Is his delight, his glee over that. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, like that's it. He's a loser and he lost. I love it. But during this call, he starts to find cockroaches around his apartment. We see occasional cockroaches here and there. He hates insects. He's got this bug spray and he's trying to spray them off, you know? But the story ramps up when someone calls on his private line. It's Norman Kastenmeier's widow, Lenore, played by Anne Muffy, and she basically tells Upson about her husband's final moments and curses him for causing his death. Again, his delight.
There's something he says. He says something like, something will kill you, but it won't hurt him now.
Yeah, it's nasty.
There's something that he says, it'll kill you. He hasn't got to worry about that now.
Yeah, he's got a really delightful way of doing it. And even puts her on hold at one stage. Yeah. But the cockroaches, all this while he's constantly distracted by an occasional cockroach here and there. It's when he finds pieces of cockroaches in his food processor after making something that things ramp up. And he gets a call from his building's landlord, Carl Reynolds. He's on vacation in Orlando, Florida. Pratt kind of threatens to sack him if he doesn't deal with this straight away. To send the handyman, Mr. White, to call an exterminator and, deal with this problem. Yeah. After finding the cockroaches in the food processor, he finds more cockroaches in a bowl of cereal and, like, a lot of them. And he starts trying to crush them as Mr. White arrives outside Pratt's door. He kind of mocks him. He's a stereotypical voice for a black character, minstrel style, like golly gosh sir, stuff like that.
I love it because he's got the upper hand. He's like, okay.
Well, I guess he's also used to dealing with them and just like, yeah, whatever.
And he talks in a racist way as well, doesn't he?
He does. Mr. Pratt has a racist tone to his voice as well. Behaviour.
When he says something, he says, are you people used to dealing with stuff like this or working hard or something like that? He says, you people.
But he does say he's calling the fumigators. Pratt then sees from his window a blackout heading towards his building. It occurs and thousands of cockroaches just burst from every nook and cranny in Pratt's apartment. This looks fantastic. Terrifying. It becomes very, very worse. So Pratt activates his emergency power and tries to call the police, but the cockroaches are in like the phone as well. They're everywhere. So the police are unable to help, and Mr. White he tries to call Mr. White, who also gets stuck in the elevator because of the blackout. Scared, frightened, unable to deal with this many roaches, Pratt locks himself in like a panic room, which is completely sealed from everything else to escape the growing swarm of cockroaches. But in there, Lenore calls him again, and he's like, "Look, I'm kind of busy," but she continues to curse him. I always wonder, has that aspect got to do with it? You know, you don't know. But he ends up discovering when he notices his bed sheet is moving that the cockroaches are all over his bed. Unable to escape, he basically has a heart attack and dies. Yeah.
I feel like the wife part. I feel like he's the roach, so he's like he'll survive everything. Like he doesn't obviously, but but he's just people like think of him as like you're a roach kind of.
Yeah.
Like a roach boss, landlord, whatever he can be. Yeah.
At his wit's end. No, that's wrong. I went back. We then see electricity returning to the building, and the apartment is completely empty of cockroaches. We see Pratt's corpse in the panic room, and Mr. White starts to call in, like, you know, to report and won't get an answer. He says something like, "What's the matter, Mr. Pratt? Bugs got your tongue?"
Yeah.
We then see Pratt's body sort of start to contort, and roaches start to burst out of his mouth and body in a quite a graphic, gross scene before enveloping the entire panic room like it's covered in roaches. Mr. White continues to call for Mr. Pratt, Upson Pratt, across the thing, but doesn't get an answer. This one, while I thoroughly enjoy it, always confused me.
Because we both thought, is he imagining that?
Yeah, an imagination thing.
And then dies of a heart attack through stress, and he's got himself so worked up.
Yeah.
He was ill anyway. But then obviously all the bugs have gone inside him and then burst out. So he did get killed by the roaches. Yeah. So it is really happening. So
best I can put together is that it was done on purpose. The roaches were unleashed on purpose. Because of the way Mr. White mocks him.
Yeah.
Obviously, Lenore, like, was it kind of like everyone just had enough of Upson Pratt?
It could be. Yeah. You wouldn't hate him for that.
Regardless of what it means or how it plays out, it is visually an impressive one, purely for the realism of the bugs and how many are used and the gory scene of them bursting out of Pratt's body. But of course, E.G. Marshall as Pratt himself, who is really the only character in it, and does a stellar fucking job.
And it's just him in the apartment, and it's not, the pacing's really good because obviously it starts off with the odd one, and he starts off with him annoyed. It's just got the odd one, and obviously it builds up to cereal or food processor, and then swarms of them, and I think the pacing's really good.
Same, agreed. I really enjoy it. And then we return to animation as a final gust of wind blows the comic book further down the street where it lands on a nearby curb. We then cut to the epilogue. And it's in the morning where we see two garbage collectors, which is Marty Schiff and Tom Savini, the makeup artist, finding the Creepshow comic book on the curb. They look through it, having some fun. X-ray specs, Charles Atlas bodybuilding corpse, like the kind of infomercial stuff you might find in it. But you also see an advertisement for Voodoo Door. That was briefly glimpsed earlier on, but they can't order it because it's already been ordered, apparently. Inside the house, Stan is complaining of having neck ache, figuring that he must have sprained it in his sleep. Upstairs, we then see Billy actually has a voodoo doll, which is created out of some of his father's clothing and hair. He then starts to stab it as we see Stan clutching his throat in pain. And obviously Stan keels over and dies. We then transition to animation for the final time with the image of Billy jabbing the door becoming the cover of the next issue of Creepshow. And the creep is seen holding the same comic book, laughing sinisterly as the candle goes out. And that is the end of Creepshow, the first movie. As we said at the start, I struggle to really say anything bad about it. You know, we've got a few negatives here and there, more about certain stories and how they play out and aspects of that, and which is your favourite and which isn't. But as an anthology horror, it's near perfect.
Definitely, like the way it looks, how like it's all linked by the even just brief things. Just keep reminding you, this is part of a comic book anthology. And there was a little thing that I think we missed in the open epilogue. So when the mum's ironing the shirts, one of the shirts she kind of looks at and is a bit missing, and she kind of tucks it away and goes, "Oh shit, I've caught
Billy
it."
cut it, okay.
So obviously now he's used it as a voodoo doll. And I was like, just reminding me, like, oh yeah.
Yeah, a little detail like that is spectacular. Yeah, this is if you've never seen Creepshow,
it's good fun.
Go see it. There's nothing better to watch this Halloween period. However, it is all downhill from here. I'm sorry, but this is the high, and it ain't getting any better than this. Which brings us to Creepshow 2, the 1987 American comedy horror anthology, directed by Michael Gornick and a sequel to Creepshow. Gornick was previously the cinematographer of the first film, and the screenplay was written by George Romero, who was director of the original film, with the film starring Lois Charles, George Kennedy, Dorothy Lamour, and Tom Savini. So there is enough to link this with the original. Like, there's enough people involved to it. You go, okay, it is a sequel.
But you notice the King element. Thinking about it now, if King's not involved.
It was once again based upon stories by Stephen King and features 3 more horror segments consisting of Old Chief Woodenhead, The Raft, and The Hitchhiker. Okay. I thought I'd jump in there with that. So there's enough involvement here to make it work. However, where I think it lacks is just overall, for starters, only 3 stories. So that means they're longer.
Yeah. I like the longer. I like the short element.
Absolutely. I like that about anthologies too. So you've got longer stories here. I think none of them none of the stories are as good as anything in the first.
No.
At all. I think one stands out more than the others, but more from a visual aspect than anything else. And there's a part of it I just do not like. And at all. I'll get to it when we kind of get a little more into it. Originally, 2 additional stories, Pinfall and Cat from Hell, were set to appear in the film, but were scrapped due to budgetary reasons, so it should have been 5 again. However, the latter, Cat from Hell, was filmed for Tales from the Dark Side, the movie.
Oh, okay.
So if you've seen that, you should know the one we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
So here's some trivia that I pulled out for it that I quite thought was interesting. Daniel Beer, who played Randy in the segment of Raft, almost died from hypothermia.
Oh.
The water was so cold his body turned green. The crew wanted him to continue acting, but director Mark Gornick said if they get him to keep working, he will walk off the set and never return.
Yeah.
So they took him to the hospital and he made a full recovery and completed the segment. Awesome!
Right, yeah, look after you've got staff, guys.
This is Dorothy Lamore's last film before she died.
Who did she play?
In Old Chief Woodenhead. She's the wife.
Ah.
David Holbrook appeared in the segment Old Chief Woodenhead. His father, Hal Holbrook, starred in Creepshow.
Ah.
That's quite cool. Much of the soundtrack was performed by legendary keyboardist Rick Wakeman of English prog rock band Yes. We saw his name pop up. We're like, oh great.
Oh, there we go. Keyboard ahoy.
Laverne's Horlicks University shirt is a reference to the original short story the segment is based on, also titled Raft, which appears in the Stephen King collection Skeleton Crew. In the story, the characters mention their students there. It has been referenced in other work by King, including the Crate segment in the original Creepshow, as well as his novel, Christine.
Oh,
So that's King for you, man. He loves it.
He likes a good link, doesn't he?
And of course, look out for a very important cameo in the Hitchhiker segment. Truck driver, Stephen King. These were the trivia was a lot less for this than it was the original Creepshow, and these were the ones I thought, yep, this is the most interesting stuff. So again, prologue. In a small town of Dexter, Maine, a delivery truck pulls up to a nearby newsstand. A young boy, Billy, Dominic John, so not joking this time, eagerly follows the truck and his bike to the newsstand. The truck's back shutter opens to reveal a sinister delivery man performed by Tom Savini, but voiced by Joe Silver, who drops off a package onto the sidewalk. Stop here. This is one aspect I do not like. I do not like the film version of the Creep.
No, I
think it looks shit. It looks like makeup.
Yeah, and I want it to be. Oh, yeah, I wanted it to have the same feel as the first one. I wanted it to have the comic book.
It does not.
No, it doesn't kind of blend as well as the first one.
No.
Yeah.
And the same when it transitions to animation. We see the package is opened by a pair of miniature winged demons, revealing its contents to be copies of the latest issue of Creepshow, with the comic having the same cover as the comic in the final scene of the previous film.
Okay, so
the Voodoo Door.
Yeah.
The delivery man is obviously the creep, and then he disappears. So this is the next aspect I want to talk about. The animation of this. It's a lot cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
It's nowhere as impressive. But also the segments are far longer.
Yeah.
Trying to be their own story. And it's just not very good. Don Bluth.
Yeah.
Reminds me of Don Bluth animation.
Yeah. I
didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. Billy picks the issue up and begins to read. The film changes location to a sinister castle where the creep welcomes the audience. After feeding a hunk of meat to a monstrous lizard, the creep proceeds to tell the first story. And see this.
There's no link to that.
It's just like, oh, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
It's just weird. Here's a castle. Here's the creep. The voice isn't that good. It's a weird lizard thing.
And it just starts.
Yeah, I just don't like the animation side of things.
I don't.
But the first story is Old Chief Woodenhead. Ray and Martha Spruce are an elderly couple who live in a small town in Dead River, Arizona. They own and operate the town's general store, which decor includes a big statue called Old Chief Woodenhead, played by Dan Cameron, which is a cigar store, native Indian, standing on the front porch. Very imposing, very big, very old school.
Yeah.
Their old rundown town is dying, so Martha encourages Ray to shut down the store, take their savings, and just enjoy retirement. She kind of wants just to move on, but he's hesitant to do it because he thinks the town can regrow and the people have been good to them, so he wants to give back to them. But we get a look at the town and it's like, nah, man, this is a dead town.
But it's a nice conversation because you see both sides of it. So she doesn't say it from anything but, you worked hard.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of look this way. And then he's like, I see your point, but also...
They're a nice couple.
Yeah, they are.
They're kind of
like
nice. Yeah, you
away.
like them.
Yeah.
And that's very important, I think. It's a very short amount of time.
But I recognised him straight away from
Naked Gun.
Yeah,
of course.
Like, oh, there he is.
Of course,
but
absolutely.
Yeah, he played it very well. Him and his wife. Yeah.
The Spruces are then visited by Benjamin Whitemoon, who's an elder of a local Native American tribe, who is in debt to the family. Unable to afford to pay off that debt, he gives them a bag of jewellery, like turquoise jewellery, sacred treasures, he says, and says, look, this is collateral until we can pay off a debt, you keep it. Ray doesn't want to, he says he can't and stuff like that, but Benjamin sort of says, look, it will insult us if you don't.
Yeah.
So, Ray agrees and sort of says, like, he'll guard them with his life. Famous last words.
Yeah, don't say that.
Whiteman leaves, and on the way out he salutes Old Chief Woodenhead, but Old Chief Woodenhead seems to nod at him, which obviously startles Whitemoon a little bit. It's the first indication that Old Chief Woodenhead might have something about him. Yeah. Later that night, though, the Spruces, after closing up, are attacked in a robbery led by Benjamin's estranged nephew, Sam Whitemoon, who, I mean, the look of him.
Very striking, isn't
Denim, with no t-shirt on, so topless, with a denim jacket on, and his long flowing black hair, which he believes will give him make him a star in Hollywood. So basically, they've come to rob, and then they're going to leave for Hollywood. He's got a shotgun, and he's with his friends, the kind of richer one. His nickname is Rich Boy, Andy, and Vince Fat Stuff is his nickname, who's a bit more gluttonous and gross looking. Yeah,
neither of them seem like they're not as
on board.
Yeah, and they're kind of like, they're just like, okay, we'll go along with it. We're kind of bored of this town, which makes sense because it's a dead town.
Yeah.
But it's good to have that kind of distinction of like, they're not all horrible.
I think they are horrible. I think they're involved. Yeah.
They're all involved, but obviously it gets to a point where like...
Even when things go over the top, they're still willing to go along with it. Yeah. So I don't quite get what I don't think it's as layered as you think it is.
No, there's no sympathy.
I know what you're saying, because they have like a face on them when about certain things, but it's like, no.
They're still involved. No, there's no sympathy, or like they shouldn't have got their revenge. But the fact that they're not all as sort of vicious as the main one.
So Lou wanted Ray and Martha killed, apparently.
No, I didn't.
So they ransack the store, take the money, but there's not much there, which annoys Sam, who demands Ray hand over the jewellery, holding Martha at gunpoint there. Martha kind of struggles a bit, and the gun accidentally goes off, killing Martha. Obviously, Ray is devastated by this, but also gets shot and killed too, leaving Sam to take the jewellery. Celebrating, he kind of shoots up the store a bit, and then it also shoots Chief Woodenhead in the face, which is a bad idea. They drive away and planning to go to Hollywood, splitting up to get their shit together, and then we'll meet back afterwards and drive off there. But we then see Old Chief Woodenhead come to life. He uses the paint that spilt when that was left outside to finish his own war paint, before screaming and hunting down the rest to avenge the murder. What do you make of Chief Woodenhead's look and movements and stuff? I thought it was really, really good.
It's good because he's wooden, so they gave him that kind of
jerky.
He doesn't transform into a human. He's just an animated wooden statue.
Well, someone in an outfit, isn't it? It's like an effect more than anything else. Like it's a character, it's an actor inside.
So they probably made it quite stiff to move in, to kind of replicate that.
Or told him to be stiff.
But yeah, I really like the way it moved.
Absolutely, and Old Chief Woodenhead makes quick work of the trio. This is quite fast paced.
Yeah.
Kills Vince, shooting him with arrows. Then he goes after Andy, hacking him to death with a tomahawk in his helm. I like the shadows of that kill more than anything else. Before going after Sam. Sam tries to fight back. He survives a little longer than anyone else. But inevitably, after locking himself in the bathroom and escape through a window, he gets pulled through the wall, and we sort of see Old Chief Woodenhead holding his hair and about to scalp him. You know what's about to happen. It cuts to black with Sam screaming. The next morning, Benjamin Whitemoon wakes up in bed to find the bag containing the jewellery on his bed. Yeah. Confused about what's going to happen, he goes to visit the Spruces, obviously. And there he sees Old Chief Woodenhead back in place, but also holding a bloody scalp and a blood-stained knife in each hand. Clearly aware, understanding what happened, Woodenhead doesn't really, he salutes and wishes the warrior a peaceful afterlife before driving away. Yeah, I think this is a solid story. I think it's a well-told one that doesn't do anything original or fresh, but I think the beginning and the ending is the best part. Yeah. I think it makes you care about the Spruces. I think the scene of the robbery is quite tense and well done, and I think the ending with the scalp and all that is dark and sinister, but a nice comeuppance for villains.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's disrespectful to any kind of like Indian. It's like the whole idea of like, we we owe you we owe you a debt. This is what we're going to do. You know, we're respectful. We're going to pay you our money. The couple are respectful to the Indian tribes. There's no kind of disrespect there.
So basically, you're saying there's no racial undertones.
So.
I don't think so at all.
I don't think some people say, "Oh, why would you have to pick that culture?" But I like the fact of that, and the fact at the end
because that culture does exist.
Yeah, and I like the fact at the end, like the uncle just nods and goes, "I know he was a wayward dick.
You got what you got.
You got what you got, and that's the way it went." I liked it.
It's a strong start. It's not brilliant, and certainly not as good as anything found in the original Creepshow. Because what I think it lacks is proper horror, proper horror, gleeful element. It's a very serious story. Yeah. Where's the comedy in this?
No, there isn't really. No, there's no fun in that.
No, there's no fun in it at all. Bit more fun than the next one though. But first, interlude number 1. The film returns to animation as Billy goes to the town post office reading a comic book. He gets a package from the clerk, Mr. Haig. Haig. Obviously a reference to Sid Haig.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Which contains apparently a product he bought through the Creepshow magazine. The sceptical clerk dismisses paying $9.99 for a toy ordered out of a funny paper. Fucking adults. But Billy mentions the package is a bulb for a meat-eating Venus flytrap. Mr. Haig obviously doubts the content, but Billy sets his money, goes off with the package. We notice the creep appearing behind the post office counter, surprised to find the audience are still watching, which is a weird line. It's like, shit, it wasn't that bad, dude.
Yeah.
And proceeds to tell the next story. Which brings us to the next segment, the Raft. In mid-October, 4 college students, Deke, Paul Satterfield, Laverne, Jeremy Green, Randy, Daniel Beer, and Rachel Page Hannah drive out to Cascade Beach, a desolate lake from civilization, for some relaxation and fun. Basically, that's the plan. Nothing complicated about it.
Quick set up.
Yeah, that's it. Arriving at the lake, the foursome discover there's a wooden raft been left out in the middle of the water. It's a nice looking place, very serene and peaceful.
You understand why.
Yeah. While swimming to the raft, Randy witnesses a duck struggling against something, like being pulled under the water, and thinks that's a bit odd. Enough that it scares him. When he gets onto the raft with Deke, he urges the girls to swim as fast as he sees this. It's like an oil slick moving towards them.
And sometimes it looks good. Sometimes it just looks like black bag floating.
But I'm okay with that because you have no idea what this thing is.
Yeah, there is that, but sometimes it looks better than others.
I disagree. To me, it's like a blob-like creature. Looks a bit like an oil slick. It's got like a covered, like not black bag, a tarp. Tarp is the word, I think. Tarp. But I think that's fine because you have no idea what this thing is. Yeah. It really is. I think you're overanalyzing because if it overanalyzing.
It's bright daylight as well, so it does. It just.
But yeah, he ends up pointing out to them and saying like that thing's really weird. It's moving. I saw this and all that. The rest are obviously quite dismissive of it. But when it gets and goes underneath the raft, and Rachel leans over to try and touch it, and it seems like tendrils reach up and grab her arm and pull her into the lake. Now, what is brilliant about this story is the visual. Whatever this stuff is, it's like it melts your body.
Yeah, like tar, like burning like chemical.
Yeah, because she starts to melt and like you instantly see like blood and all that, and she's in it, and it's really gross. It's quite nasty. It's
quite nicely done. Yeah.
But she ends up disappearing into it. Seemingly, this thing digests her. Obviously, panicking. The 3 main students kind of like, how are we going to get out of this? But remember, it's off season. It went in October, so there's no one going to be rescuing them anytime soon. No one's likely to come. Time passes. You know, they're stuck on this raft. This thing is circling and stuff like that. Deke thinks he can swim to shore to bring help, but before he can do it, the blob seeps through the raft's cracks and grabs his foot. Randy Laverne tried to save him.
Yeah, it was a bit harder.
They're sort of like, you know?
Sorry, I can't help you.
And he ends up getting pulled through the raft. I like his death scene because he kind of gets folded up, doesn't he? His leg, like, you know?
It's good.
They notice the creature's still hungry, but they work out that if they don't stand in the gaps of the raft, it can't get them.
Yeah.
They'll stand in their feet placed perfectly on it. Which is a clever enough idea, but not something you're going to be able to do for long.
Nope.
Night falls, they're obviously afraid to fall asleep because the creature is constantly around, but they end up taking turns, but do both end up falling asleep together, and wake up in the morning, and Laverne's still asleep. Randy notices, you know, we're still here. The creature's still around, but he hasn't killed us. Unfortunately, this leads us to arguably the film Creepshow's most disgraceful moment. Just like, what the actual fuck is going on? Well, Randy, who was a character I thought we were supposed to like, decides, oh, Laverne's asleep. I'm going to have a major grope.
Yeah.
And literally starts to grope her, kissing her and all that, lifting her top up, kissing her boobs.
Yeah.
It's like, you're generally like, what the fuck is this? Like, why is this in?
But I don't even have it like that she wakes up and reacts. As in, like, she kind of likes him as, like... It's weird all over. But
it just comes across... It's a sexual assault.
It's weird as well. Like, the fact that she doesn't wake up through it, like... You know, like I've had it in other films where like they kind of like throw you off and go, oh, they liked each other anyway. Like they was secretly together and that kind of angle where she wakes up and goes, oh, what you like?
What you like? What do you like? Fucking sexually assaulting
me. No,
me.
it's still not great. But if she was like, she liked him as well, then it's slightly less. What the fuck am I watching? It's odd. It's just odd. Didn't need it. And like, who's gonna feel horny when it's fucking like what you've just been through? Like at the beginning, maybe you could. But, oh, no, it was just unneeded. It
was so fucking unnecessary. And it was dumb because at that point, I think you were supposed to like Randy. The one who, one who was trying and stuff like that and warned the girls initially. And it's just like, the fuck? Yeah. But it does result in a cool death. Yeah. As Laverne does wake up and sort of turns her face to reveal that where her face fell across the crack, the creature, the monster, had melted half her face. Yeah. Obviously, Randy's startled by that. The blob ends up pulling off the raft and consumes her too. Randy uses this opportunity to jump off the raft to swim to shore, making a desperate chase for it, eventually actually getting to the beach just before the creature grabs him. Safe, he thinks. He screams, I beat you. And we then get a quick smash cut of the creature rearing up out of the water like a wave and then like diving over Randy. I like that because it was like, ha, you deserve that, Randy.
Yeah.
Like, I like that. And the last shot is... We see the blob sort of returning slowly to the lake. It's very, very quiet now, serene. There's no proof there except obviously the car and the clothes. And the camera pans around to reveal a sign that said no swimming. Yeah. Yeah. I like this one, and I like that because it's got that gleeful Creepshow feel.
Yeah, like, oh, there's a little bit more to it.
Yeah.
I was like, so like, where did the rafts just, it's quite a big advert of like, oh, maybe come out and swim to the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like... If more people knew about it, the raft would be taken away. Yeah. It's not encouraged or fenced off. So yeah, it's all quite sinister.
Yeah, and there's not a load, there's no explanation what it is, why it is, or anything like that. It's simply, it's a cool, the shortest one of the lot. Yeah. With some impressive visual effects. That's what I really, really like about this one. This is why it sticks with me. It was the one that always stuck with me because the whole melting body horror aspect more than anything else. Like there's nothing particularly special about it. It's... No. Like characters you won't really give a shit about, like I said, even less when when Randy gets all super fucking perverted, that behaviour, but it's the one that stands out the most.
Definitely.
Even though arguably the next one is the one that has the most Creepshow feel about it.
Yeah, I think you think on that point. But yeah, I think the shortness of it really helped it.
It does, yeah. Had it been any longer and we got lots of talking on the raft and stuff like that, not interested. But then we get Interlude 2 as the film returns to animation. Like I said at the start, these sections are just too long. We see Billy making his way back home. He's ambushed by a gang of bullies. The gang leader's Rhino. He takes Billy's package from him, smashes it, and drops the bulb on the ground before stamping on it too. Billy, angry about that, ends up kicking Rhino in the groin and fleeing. Rhino chases him on the bike with his little underlings on the bikes. As Billy escapes, the creep arrives and says, like, Billy knows his way around town, so the bullies won't catch him in a hurry, so he can tell us one last story. I really hate the animation in this interlude. This is why I really know. It's the bullies. This is why I got that Don Bluth thing more than anything else.
Oh, but like these films, like bike chases, bullies on bikes, that's such a cliche.
Stephen King.
Yeah,
Stephen King, man.
A lot of 80s films had the whole bikes.
Stephen King. Everything with Stephen King.
Yeah, then you've got things like E.T. and now more modern Stranger Things has a lot of bullies and kids and
80s, yeah.
Yeah.
The last story, it's the hitchhiker. Annie Lansing is an adulterous Maine living woman. We will see her waking up and getting out of bed after sleeping with her lover. I like that back and forth. She realised she's late to get home because of a power outage, which I wondered if was a link
to cockroach.
Cockroaches, yeah.
I think it is.
But she's only got 50 minutes to get home before her attorney husband George arrives because she's worried if she's late he might suspect an affair.
Yeah.
So she's got to get there back before him. I was a bit like, Jesus, like late and you're late. So you must be having an affair. Yeah. There's some untold background between them clearly, marital strife or potential she's had an affair in the past and got caught, that kind of thing, and then was forgiven. But I do like the scene between Annie and her lover, because it doesn't let you know he's her lover. They kind of laugh and joke. She ends up paying him. You thought she was the prostitute.
Yeah, because I kind of misheard some of the dialogue.
But she's paying him.
Yeah.
But like on her way at the door, she says something about like being married and all that in a kind of laughy way. She's got a very gleeful, relaxed attitude to everything.
Yeah, like she's not going to get caught out.
Yeah, she's confident.
She's caught off guard a little bit, so she's a little bit more hurried and stuff, which is obviously what leads to the next part.
Yeah, she's driving too fast, smoking while doing it. She ends up losing control of the car and runs down a hitchhiker who's holding a sign Fort Dover. He's clearly dead. He is clearly dead, the way the body is splayed. And she realises nobody saw her. No car is approaching. She ends up driving off because no one saw her. The area incident is actually lots of people arrive from different directions after she's driven off, including a truck driver, Stephen King, a pair of passerbys who just come along as well, and the driver who was following her, who we'll find at the end, but I'll say it now, was actually George, her husband. So he stops and calling the police about hit and run. Along the way, Annie is driving and she's thinking about what she did, and she's rationalising what she can do. Should I turn myself in, or will I be able to get away with this? She figures she can get away with it because nobody saw anything.
And hitchhiker's more likely to be a drifter.
Yep. Will the police try that hard?
Yeah.
Will the police try that hard?
That's probably part of her reasoning.
However, after stopping, she ends up seeing a hitchhiker in the distance in the rearview mirror, approaching her slowly, which naturally freaks her out. But when she looks again, he's gone. But a hitchhiker suddenly appears outside a window and utters the line, "Thanks for the ride, lady," which is a line that's repeated over and over again throughout.
I like that element of it.
I do as well. She speeds off in terror, but he's on top of the roof now and is trying to reach her through the sunroof. We get kind of a frantic chase, panic sort of thing. She drives off the road, through the woods, where she manages to knock the hitchhiker off with a low-hanging branch. Fun. Nervously, she ends up pulling a gun from the glove compartment, but the undead hitchhiker keeps reappearing. Open the door of the passenger seat. She shoots him multiple times, but he will not die. She does manage to kick him out of the car and run him over repeatedly. She's obviously quite hysterical at this point, trying to get away, but he continues to climb on the hood of her car, holding up the Dover sign, which now reads, "You killed me." She loses control of the car, driving it off-road, smashing into a tree, where she then proceeds to slam the hitchhiker into the tree over and over again, leading to her smashing up the car, but also knocking herself out. Yep. She wakes up a little while later, hitchhiker's gone, and she figures she had a nightmare, had an accident, had a nightmare. Now the accident gives her a valid explanation for being late, because the car is trashed. Yeah. So she gets home and actually does get all the way home, parking it into the garage to find out that George isn't home. And she's like, oh my God, all this, and George wasn't home first anyway. But we will see in the final scene why George was late. But when she gets out of the car, the hitchhiker is still there, muttering, "Thanks for the ride, lady." She tries to fight him off, but we see the garage door swing shut as the interior begins to fill up with smoke. Sometime later, George arrives home, which is how we find out that that's why George was late, because he stopped. And he opens up the garage door. The car is still running, and Annie is dead from carbon monoxide poisoning, with the hitchhiker's bloody Dover sign sitting in her lap. Now, I like this story because it's the one that feels the most Creepshow-like. The way it plays out, the comic book feel, the dark ending, the little twist that George was the person that stopped and helped the hitchhiker. But also it's very gory. I didn't mention as I was talking it through, but the hitchhiker, each time he reappears, is more and more mangled. More and more bloody, more and more damaged and stuff like that, to the end where he's basically a walking corpse. I really like that aspect.
And it's really well done, as that the whole kind of it makes more sense with a guilt building. Like that he would look worse and worse, and the fact that he can't get away. He's actually dead. So every time you see him, you're just reminded, I actually hit someone.
Yeah, I like how her fear turns to anger, and then like defiance and insistent that she's going to beat him kind of thing. I think that's an important aspect. Good touch. You know, there's probably a few too many scenes where we're just alone with her in the car talking. But for the most part, I think this one is quite succinct and plays out. And you kind of wait for the next instance, the next instance, the next instance. And each time, because it's a driving car, you're kind of like, well, how are they going to change it up? We've had him coming behind, we've had him on the sunroof. So like next time they put him at the front of the car on the hood. Do you know what I mean? Stuff like that.
And it's nasty the fact that she actually gets home, so she thinks she's won to a point. And it's like, nope.
Yeah.
Away, which is the extra twist.
Yeah, and the carbon monoxide poisoning as well, with the Dover sign, it looks like suicide. It looks like she couldn't, because that Dover sign links her to the hit and run. That's what that does. So that makes her guilty when the police look into it and stuff like that. So she got home, couldn't live with the guilt, killed herself. Right?
Yep.
Right? Yeah, I like that. Yeah. That's the last story. Like I said, it's only got 3, and we get a final epilogue, returning to animation as the creeper's inside the delivery truck from the beginning of the film. He's going to drive away, but Billy and the bullies go past him. Billy leads his pursuers to a vacant lot with some out-of-control plant growth, as we see Billy's planted a load of the bulbs he'd ordered in the past. Giant Venus flytraps then emerge and attack the bullies, eating them all up in a comedic fashion. The last scene is Billy opening his copy of Creepshow, display the advertisement for the giant Venus flytraps he ordered, reaffirming that they eat meat. We already knew that. We just fucking saw it.
Yeah, it's a bit half-assed, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just, here's the thing, it's not that it's bad animation, I just don't care for the story that's told through it. And I just think it's overtly cartoony, like it's a Don Bluth-esque, that I just find it jarring around the stories.
I wanted more realism, because like when it went to the creep in the first one, he was a skeleton, but he had a little bit more kind of depth to the shading and stuff like this. It was just a bit, because that Don Bluth is very...
What he's focusing on becomes quite sharp, where the backgrounds are quite muted.
Yeah.
That's what happens. Regardless of that, overall, I think it's still a decent enough movie. I think the 3 stories all have positives.
Yeah.
None are amazing. That's the problem. But of the 3, your favourite?
I'd probably go for the first one.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I definitely
That's
would.
that's the third. That's
Really?
the worst
For
for
you?
me.
Oh,
Yeah, I would put the Raft the highest, purely because it's short, snappy, and got some amazing effects, and I really like the mystery of the monster. I'd put the Hitchhiker second because it's the most Creepshow-esque one, and then I'd put Old Chief Woodenhead last. But that's not to say they're bad. I think had there been, let's say there'd been 5 and 2 stories that were shorter, proper short ones, like the Geordie Verrell one.
Yep.
Maybe they'd stand out more then, because of 3 longish stories.
That's all you got to focus on.
And then, like, so we've got this constant interruptions with these long... The animation alone, story-wise, probably takes 10 minutes of the film overall. Yeah. It's not anywhere as good as the original.
Definitely not.
But it's still a worthy enough follow-up that I think if you want... You could get enjoyment out of it. Yeah. Particularly if you watch them back-to-back.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. But it's really going to go downhill next. As we're going to now talk about Creepshow 3. Creepshow 3, 2006. I said 2014 at the start. 2006. Comedy horror film, sequel to, obviously, Creepshow and Creepshow 2. Directed and produced by Anna Clavel and James Donaldson. The film stars Chris Allen, AJ Bowen, Emmett Maguire and Stephanie Petit. Like its predecessors, the film is a collection of tales of light-hearted horror, which I do agree. This has some light-hearted horror in it. We get Alice, the radio, Cold Girl, the professor's wife and haunted dog. Although there is no EC comic angle around this time. So already you have an issue there.
Yeah, you're really kind of like, you're just dropping links like left, right and centre.
It was like Creepshow 3, but no comic book angle. Okay.
Yeah, if you say Creepshow 3, people go, oh, sweet, we're going to get this, we're going to get this. No. It should also be noted that there is no involvement for either Stephen King or George A. Romero, the series creators. So again, problem. I think the only thing they kind of kept was they had a link over the whole for the whole 5 stories, didn't they? Yeah,
we will get to that. We will get to that. It's the one thing I think we did like.
Yeah, and that was obviously, that felt like a nod to the anthology aspect of the previous 2 films.
Kind of. I think it's interesting as well that Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, the 1990s, is actually considered a true Creepshow 3 because of George A. Romero and Stephen King's contributions to the film.
I've not seen that one.
That's one for the future.
Yeah, definitely.
So, wraparound story. Unlike the first 2 Creepshow installments, the wraparound element linking the stories was a horror comic in Creepshow 1 and 2. Creepshow 3 actually takes an approach similar to something like Pulp Fiction, where characters from each story interact with each other during the film. Yeah. So, like, this is a different story, but in it, this person does exist in a different role. And I like the reference to Pulp Fiction that I read and found. I was like, okay, that makes sense.
I like it, but there's plenty of other films that do that. Keep it
Creepshow.
Keep it Creepshow.
Yep.
Keep it
Creepshow. It's as simple as that. There's nothing complicated about it. The common element in this, though, is a hot dog stand. That's the common element throughout all the films, a hot dog stand. Although brochures, ads and other things are peppered throughout.
The Professor's in a fair amount as well.
That's to do with the wrapper. That's to do with the link. I'm talking about common elements.
Oh, okay,
where things are in the background. Like the ashtray.
Yeah, okay.
Like the ashtray from the original one.
Hot dog stand, right.
So 5 stories. And this is a shorter, sharper part of our in-depth because there's not as much to talk about these. A lot of them just feel like wastes of time, really.
Yeah.
And we begin with one that I think is just downright confusing. Alice. Alice, Stephanie Petty, is a stuck-up, snotty teenager who comes home to find her father meddling with some kind of universal remote. Good God, do I hate the acting here.
Yeah.
I hate the acting. It's so on the nose. Alice is... I know it was her debut as well. I think, it was Stephanie Petty's debut film. But she's not great. No. The snotty teenager thing is so caricature. But when she gets home, it's her family. They fucking suck as actors. Every one of them.
So bad.
It's so cheesy. You feel like you're watching a sitcom. Thanks to the lighting and the visual effects.
But they didn't go far enough with that. That's what they wanted us to feel.
They really need to push it. Absolutely. And basically, whenever he pushes a button on a device, the whole family, except for Alice, changes. So it begins with ethnicity. But when he messes around with the colour and the hue settings. So they turn into African Americans, repeat the same dialogue that they did in the previous scene about Alice never getting a boyfriend because she's got a flat ass. Which is really weird. Yeah. Mom, grandmother and stuff like that. And the subtitles button makes the family turn Hispanic. Yeah. And then we get them speaking in Spanish more than anything else. While this is all going on, Alice mutates into her true form. And this is so confusing because you generally don't have a clue what's going on. But what really makes it worse is Alice doesn't seem to acknowledge what's going on. No, her hand transforms into take my strong hand. From Scary Movie 2, like fused fingers and boils and stuff. Yeah. But she doesn't even acknowledge it.
No, but it doesn't make it jokey enough. I think they should link into more the remote controls, where it's like a family sitcom with a live audience. That kind of...
Yeah, like a laugh track might have worked.
That might have worked well. And then a reason why... Or they talk about, the old TV... The grandma says, that TV will fry your brains or something. I don't know, there's some sort of link of why she's starting to mutate like that.
It was baffling because she only really seems to pay attention when her leg gets transformed and then she starts to limp and then the side of her face does as well. Here's the thing, the effect is great. It's very gross. It's pulsating boils and juicy and sore. She goes around looking for help, but then like I said, it gets so fucking weird. She goes to the local professor's house, eats his cake. We get that as a long scene. A delivery man arrives. We then get a scene where she's trying to drink some milk to get rid of the cake and the delivery man leaves and you're like, what the hell is going on? But eventually things look like they go back to normal when her father presses another button, which actually transforms Alice completely. Horrified at the sight of this pretty nasty looking blobbish creature. The story then ends with Professor Dayton, the mad scientist, the one we mentioned, who lives in the street, using another remote control to turn Alice into a white rabbit. And you're like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. What is this?
Something as Wonderland nod.
What you shouldn't be doing is going, you're going to have to watch the rest of the stories to understand this one. Yeah. No, because even by the end, while I understand other elements, I get it a little bit more. It's like, no, the first one shouldn't be leaving me this baffled. Yeah. It shouldn't.
It's not a good start.
And notably in this story is obviously linked to Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Obviously, Alice Rabbit. Yeah. Yep. And 4 links later, Victor the vampire makes appearance in this story, which he does, as well as some of the others standing on the street and stuff like that. It's a cool visual looking one because of the transformation. Yeah. But I hated this one. Yeah. I was like, this is fucking dumb and I don't get it.
Yeah, keep it simple, short, keep the gore, but just make it more accessible. Go to lengths of... I don't know, maybe you grabbed a remote control off his dad.
Just make it more comedic, maybe.
Yeah, why are you taking...
I think you nailed it when it sort of had, if you're going for the sitcom thing, had a laugh track and aspects like that.
And you could have made the acting a bit more understandable, they are cheese... stiff
then actors. I would have bought it a bit more. And the second story is the radio. This is the one of the longer one, and you'll feel it. Yeah. Jerry, AJ Bowen, is a part-time security guard who buys a radio from a homeless street vendor to replace his old one, which stops working. So he lives in his rubbish fucking apartment with lots of drug dealing going on, a pimp, prostitute, stuff like that. Yeah. And to distract himself from that, he likes to play the radio. Implies he hasn't got much money, but then we see his apartment. You're like, well, you're not that poor.
It looks
poor.
nice.
It's a nice looking apartment.
So you've got some sort of like, I mean, it's a little bit grubby inside, but overall it doesn't look like a complete derelict mess like the rest of the building.
Yeah, they didn't really get that across well, because all I kept thinking is buy a fucking TV. But this new radio comes with a voice. It's a bit out of the ordinary. A radio that can have a conversation with Jerry. And Jerry just doesn't takes this in his stride, to be honest, which is not great. Oh, no. Right, he's a bit like skeptical at first and stuff, but he kind of just ends up listening to it and talking to this radio who helps sort of transform his life. We sort of see him starting to eat better, clean his apartment a bit more, but this does lead to more dangerous things as he ends up stealing money from I guess drug dealers, money that was stashed there.
I've got the cliche pimp, isn't it, as well?
Oh, it is. Oh, it is. And he occasionally like runs into a prostitute who sort of flirts with him, and he seems to have an attraction to her, but that's never made clear enough to really make sense. He also ends up murdering people. The radio ends up encouraging him to murder some of his neighbours who see him normally in situations where he might be linked back to the theft and stuff like that. It's pretty boring, I'm going to be honest. Yeah,
it just dribbles along and it looks cheap. Like this whole film's got, you know, like I don't know, mid 2000s kind of like made for TV sheen.
Made for TV is a very good one because it's video. It's a straight to video. It's a straight to video.
It just looks cheap,
DVD release. He ends up, after things get a bit too hot, it's time to leave. But against the radio's wishes, he actually takes the prostitute who sees he's leaving. He's going to move out, and says like, "Can I come with you?" And Jerry agrees. Now the problem with this is like, other than standing looking at her wide-eyed, I never really got the impression they were that into each other. Like, had he had her over for dinner, like, because she implies she's getting beaten by a pimp, and like him say like, "I'll look after you" and things like that.
Just like a
considering the length of it, we could have done a little bit more with this relationship. The radio's really unhappy about this and insists Jerry kill the hooker or she will kill him. But Jerry's like, I'm having none of it. They end up pulling over like some farmhouse where she needs to use the toilet, and it's there he refuses to just kill her and destroys the radio instead. But immediately after, the hooker who snuck around the back gets his gun and shoots Jerry, killing him. Seemingly she was planning to rob him all along and then take his car and stuff and leave for a new life. Oh, what a surprise. But immediately she's then killed. You know, what the fuck? She's then killed, and we see the shooter is the pimp who was her pimp and the one living in the same building as Jerry. He ends up taking the money from the boot, returns to the car, and see he's got a radio that tells him they're going to go start a new life. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it was just
bland. Didn't make sense. It just didn't make sense.
Stupid and bland.
It's just not very good. It's just a bit boring. It's boring. Is the most over.
They wanted to develop characters a bit more than they had time for. Convoluted. They had too many changes to like focus. No.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not good one.
But to link him in, Alice's father, Detective Jacobs, her father is apparently a detective, appears in this story. He calls on what's his face to, and when he's investigating the murders, and asks him some questions and stuff like that. The killer call girl as well, Rachel, appears in this, as well as the pimp and the two boys from the professor's wife. So there's a lot more characters in this one. Some you won't know till later on. Yeah. Which brings us to Call Girl. Rachel is a murderous call girl. She likes to kill her victims. She gets hired and then kills them, and apparently gets away with it. Yeah. Is very impressed when on the radio she hears she's been dubbed the call girl killer. Yeah? Okay. But she gets a request from a shy man named Victor who wants her to come visit him. Yeah. Obviously Rachel thinks it's just going to be another easy victim. She comes inside. Outside, she runs into the two boys all appearing the professor's wife.
They're gawping away at her.
Gawping away at her. She's very confident. I will give her that. She's got a very confident appeal, like about her. Like if you're a young boy, you're like, oh, you know, that kind of thing. But she ends up coming inside the house, and she remarks how like none of the pictures have Victor in it and stuff like that. And he says he's like the black sheep of the family.
Yeah, not proud of him.
And he kind of just wants to get on with things. So they go to the bedroom, but on the way we see there's like the family of that house are tied up with their throats slashed. So straight you're like, okay.
I like that element of it. Like tables turned, kind of.
I didn't. I liked it because what I thought it was initially going to be, I liked, which was the whole killer and a killer. Yeah. I told you while we were watching it, I watched a great anthology that did a New Year's Eve thing that about this same thing, and it was quite entertaining. But it's not that. That's the problem. Rachel chains him to the bed and then obviously stabs him in the chest several times after pretending she's going to get sexy with him. She then puts a pillow over his face and has a shower. While having a shower, she hears Victor's voice saying, "You killed me." Come back into the room. Yep. She removes the pillow to reveal he's got this face with his wide mouth, demonic face and sharp teeth. Apparently Victor's a vampire. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. He kills Rachel, hangs her in a room with the house owners who he's already killed. We see blood pouring down her neck, suggesting that she might become a vampire herself. So, yeah, this is this one. It's okay. It's short. It's succinct. It tells its story exactly what it needs to be. The problem for me is I didn't get vampire.
No.
Because of the face and all that, I was like, only after when I think in a later one it makes a bit more sense.
Yeah.
And you're a bit like, could have made it a bit more obviously vampire.
Yeah.
That would have been fine.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think it's fine. It's not particularly exciting, interesting, scary.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's part of an anthology, you'd be like, oh. But you want more from these ones called Creepshow.
That's the problem. Yeah, this is a Creepshow movie and we're 3 stories in and been underwhelmed completely. Yeah. However, we are going to take an upturn into what I think is the best one.
Definitely.
And the one that feels most Creepshow.
I would end with this one. End on a high.
Maybe. It's the professor's wife, where 2 former students come to visit their old Professor Dayton. So the professor we saw in Alice, the one that lives in the street, and the link that runs through all the films. Yeah. They're there to meet his fiancée, Kathy, who they're there to celebrate his upcoming wedding. Yeah. Although they're surprised the professor's going to be getting married because he's been such a hermit and a bachelor for so long.
Working hard on stuff.
But they're actually convinced themselves that they're being victims of his practical jokes in the past. And we get flashbacks of his practical jokes.
Which is very Creepshow.
But also well over the top, including one that appears he fucks with their car using a remote control. Yeah, and you hear it crash. Yeah. And you're like, okay, this is very Creepshow. It's cartoony. Yeah. Exactly that. But they begin to suspect Kathy is an actual robot. Not helped by the fact that Professor's hiding something he's been working on for 20 years in his laboratory. And now he's going to show you the results. Yeah. But she also behaves like a robot. Yeah. She doesn't eat a drink. The way she speaks, the way she moves, her mannerisms, her confusion about certain things. It's clever because it's like, it's not overtly robotic.
No, but it's...
But it's enough to make you go, ha. And when you find out the truth behind you, even more like, oh, okay, that explains a lot.
Yeah, because she said, I'm looking after my figure because I'm getting married. I can't fit in my dress.
Yeah.
Like, oh, she doesn't eat.
Because it'll screw up the circuits, yeah.
And she keeps bringing out food.
Over and over again. It's the only thing she's doing.
It's obviously because she's a bit nervous meeting people. She's still quite new to the culture.
She can't remember how her and Professor met.
Yeah, and they're like, what?
But we actually find out that's because she suffers from some form of short-term amnesia. And the reason why that's important is the Professor goes out of the house to collect something and they decide, you know what, let's dismantle her. Well, let's get her own back. We know it's a joke. Let's dismantle her to see what she looks like on the inside. Yeah. And we then cut to them covered in blood, holding bits of flesh and limbs up, marvelling at how real it looks.
It's really well done. It's like, oh my God, like he's gone to the effort of making all the muscles. Look at the brain.
Yeah, they take the brain out and like, can I touch it? Can I touch it? Yeah. But it does begin to slowly dawn on him that she was human. And then they discover that he finds a scrapbook. One of them finds of their relationship. And through that discovers she was a mail order bride. Indeed. They quickly try to dispose and hide all the body parts and clean up and super fast before leaving. The Professor comes home to find Kathy gone. And obviously inside the oven finds her body parts. He later buys an advanced voodoo kit from a homeless street vendor to put Kathy back together in time for their wedding. And obviously in this one, Rachel Cullicorgon makes a brief appearance, as she did in the previous. This is the best one. Yeah. It's short, it's silly, it's cartoony, it's comic book, it's funny in a really dark and twisted way.
Yeah, when they get
Love it.
When they get one of the body parts out, like they're just because it's nice because their setup's nice. I was inviting these former students. Yep. They're quite respectful.
They respect him. Yep, he has a relationship with them.
It's just entertaining to watch because the guys play it well. When they're doing on limbs, it's just silly to watch, and then the clean-up's like done like really quickly.
Really fast, sped up
really
footage.
Fast, and like the Professor's not a bad man.
Nope.
Like no one's horrible, and like you can look at the wife going, "Oh, okay, so he's worked for 20 years, you know, maybe it is a robotic."
It's enough to convince you it works.
Silly,
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoy it. It's one that, to me, is on par with the stuff we've got in Creepshow 2.
Yeah.
Not on the first, of course, but on par with stuff in Creepshow 2.
Definitely.
Like, if you put this one, imagine this was in Creepshow 2 as one of the extra 2 ones.
I'd be happy with that.
A really short one. You'd have a really much stronger film.
Definitely.
There's one more story to come, though. And this, to me, is the second best one. Purely because of one person's performance.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. It's Haunted Dog, not an actual dog. It's
I thought,
a cruel, basically miserable doctor man, Dr. Farrell, is basically forced to work a 30-day court-ordered sentence at a free clinic where he is a dick to his patients.
Yeah.
And we get sharp cuts of him telling people and being rude to them and all that. It works really well. The problem is they redo it later on, which they didn't need to.
Get it? Like there's a blind woman. There's a woman with cataract. Cataract, and he's like, well, start.
Any films you want to see?
Yeah, start watching them now.
Yep.
And he's just his delivery and like he's obviously
the girl who has a tumour. And he tells her like, has she got like maybe throw a prom for her this weekend?
Yeah,
that kind of thing. He's mean.
Good. Yeah, he looks just like Janie with everything. He's obviously like he takes drugs. Like,
yeah, he's taking a ton of pills. He's not a nice man. That's the most important thing as well. As we see him go to buy a hot dog and he just forces his way into queue. Yeah. But he ends up dropping the hot dog on the floor. Previously he'd been asked for some money by a homeless guy. Picking up the dirty dog, he decides to give it to the homeless man, who ends up choking to death on this. Yeah. Which obviously is where the story goes. He's not bothered as well. Like someone calls out for a doctor. Yeah. And this is we knowing him he's a doctor. Yeah, it's we know he's a doctor.
And then later when you go see him go to the clinic, you're like, he was a fucking
doctor and did nothing to save him. Absolutely. But yeah, he ends up being haunted by this homeless man. Now, I don't love the ghost effect. Whereas like the Hitchhiker, because it bears some resemblance to Creepshow 2's The Hitchhiker. Yeah. This one has like a hue around him.
And you see him in the day quite a lot.
Yeah, and it's kind of made to look like it's special effects. I do like the sort of dirty dribble he's got caused by the hot dog around his mouth. Yeah. But he ends up following around the doctor everywhere.
It would look better if he was like in real life, I would have thought. A bit more like a real person.
Yeah, like the Hitchhiker.
Yeah,
like absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
a lot more realistic. Yeah.
But there's a lot of scenes of him being haunted and chased around by him. He ends up going to a club, which is the vampire club that we later will now put links together. Most of it is him just getting worse and worse on drugs and stuff like that. The middle portion's dragged out. There's this story's problem. Yeah. Particularly as we then go back to him being a cruel doctor again.
Well, we know that he is.
And it kind of like we don't need to do these short scenes. They are funny, and the actor is brilliant.
He's great at it.
He's brilliant at it. But eventually it leads to him having a heart attack after having one too many encounters with the stalker. In this, obviously, Victor from the Call Girl also appears in the segment, and he appears to be in cahoots with Dr. Farrell in a weird scene with drugs and things like that. Don't really get it.
No, again, another scene that was like, he's a bit of a wrong un.
Yeah.
You could have like cut that a lot shorter because he goes back there a couple of times.
Yeah, it is again a couple of times. There is that aspect. There's also links to the Hitchhiker in this, as the homeless man can be heard muttering, "Thanks for the good dog." Yeah. Which has got links to "Thanks for the ride, lady." Yeah. And a Hispanic woman from Alice also makes an appearance in this story. So this one, it's the second best purely because of Dr. Farrell and his character and the acting involved and the comedic edge of his cruelty, because it's got this silly tongue-in-cheek vibe to it. And it's like no one can be this much of a bastard.
And it feels like he's bored. Like I feel like he feels like he can get away with it because it's a free clinic. Like who are you going to complain to? Like you're not paying for this care. Yeah. But it always seems like it's on the borderline of he still does his job because you see him doing certain. Yeah, because it's court ordered. Yeah. But he's just enough of a dick where like he'll just completely.
Rather than diagnose and help, he just wants you gone. That kind of aspect. There is an epilogue, and the epilogue reveals that the street vendor homeless man got the 2 radios from Professor Dayton and the Professor's wife, which are the ones we saw later on. After this tale ends, it shows Professor Dayton at his wedding with his resurrected wife, who is completely bandaged up, and we'll get back to that sort of comedic element too. There's a huge crowd there watching. It shows Professor Dayton and his wife drive off. We get this comedic moment where she throws the bouquet, but her hand comes off as well. Yeah. And like he takes the hand. I can't remember what he says here.
Oh, so she's such a prankster.
Yeah, prankster. Yeah. They get in the car, and I like her jerky. She's now actually more robotic now than anything else.
And she starts bleeding as well.
Yeah.
I think from like the eyes. Or something like that. So underneath the bandages, she starts bleeding through them again.
It's pretty horrible, but again, it's got that funny comedic tone. Yeah. Alice's mum states that Alice will look so beautiful on her wedding day because they're there watching. To which the family agrees. We see Alice's pet rabbit in the backseat of Professor Dayton's car. The priest, confused, asks the husband how Carol is with the response, and he says, look, she's not well and still believes that she has a daughter named Alice. Okay, so Alice just disappeared. It then zooms in on the back of the hot dog guy's head. He turns around and reveals that he is the creep, resembling the version from Creepshow 2 all along. Yeah. And that's Creepshow 3. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
There's nothing Creepshow about it. Whatever little tiny links it tries to do, it does not do well. No. We do appreciate how it tries to link all 5 stories together, either by location or character-wise. The problem is, not enough of it works. Not enough of it makes sense. And you're still left alone, like, going, oh, say, Professor Dayton creates these radios. That's it. Okay? I think he should have been focal point of it. And then reveal at the end to be the creep.
Yeah.
He's the focal point, creates these devices, creates these stories and stuff like that. The only problem is then the professor's wife wouldn't work as a story.
Yeah.
That's the only problem. It's the best one.
He's got to be a nice guy. I would have thought maybe have him, kind of like in Creepshow, he's making all these things. Each story was something different that he invented. Yep. And that links it back to him, like it's one of his creations.
Yeah. Then you can still do the creep
as... He's one of the strongest elements. So it's weird they kind of just like had these bloated stories, and then the best ones, like even at the bit of the wedding, it was so much fun to watch because like hand goes with the bouquet, she's bleeding from under them,
and he was a good actor as well. Yeah,
because he was kindly. He reminded me of the doctor from Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah. He reminded me of him,
I like that.
Kind of well-meaning, not all there.
Yeah.
But dedicated and just nice person. So yeah, that's what I got from it.
No, that's pretty good. I get that as well. It's the worst one of a trilogy that literally got worse as it went on. We started off at such a bar, nothing could ever reach it. No. But here's the thing: I don't think Creepshow 3 is Creepshow 3 is a terrible movie.
No, I've seen worse. I just feel like if you're watching it, you'd be like a few bits in going, is this Creepshow?
No, that's the thing. It's not a Creepshow movie. That's what it is. As an anthology, it's nothing special. As a Creepshow movie, it's not up there at all with the others. So basically, you start off high and it's a downward trend from there. But it's not enough of a drop with Creepshow 2 to avoid that. Yeah. I think they're thoroughly, overall, all worth watching to a degree. Creepshow 3 maybe not so much, but I think if you're doing them all like we did in His Depth, you kind of want to do it. But we urge you simply to do this Halloween. If you've only got time for one and you've never seen it, watch Creepshow. Yeah. Do. Absolutely. You will not be disappointed. You got any thoughts on it? Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon and help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl as well as Big Cartel where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?